Hello, good afternoon. We're going to get this meeting started, so if people could please take their seats. And the echoes in this room travel quite far, so if you do have additional conversations, we would appreciate it if you could take them to the hallway. I'm Councilmember Jose Huizar, Chair of Plum, joined today by the veteran of this committee, Chairman Englander, and also a veteran of public service, Councilmember Gilbert Cedillo. And quorum is present. We could get this meeting started. And if we could take up item number 3 first. It's on consent. So without objection, I would recommend item number 3 to go on consent, and there are no speakers cards. Is that okay with my colleagues? And can we read item number 3 into the record, please?
Yes, council members. Item 3 is a motion by Mr. O'Farrell and seconded by Mr. Huizar, instructing planning to initiate a height district change in Echo Park. And I think the action would be to refer it to the planning department and request an update in 30 days.
Great, thank you. So we will move that item as instructed. Next item is item number 8. And that is the Director of Planning report. Mr. Legrand, thank you for being with us. Anything to report?
Very briefly, I'd like to update you on a few items that have taken place. The Planning Department utilizes a number of interns. At any one given time, we have up to 20 interns working in the department, helping us with our work program, gaining great, valuable work experience, but also giving us a great product for the citizens of Los Angeles. Our 2013 volunteer internship program is underway. The last day to apply is by noon tomorrow, August 14th, 2013, for anyone who's interested in applying for an internship with the department. In addition, we've been working with Department of Neighborhood Empowerment on a number of board member development series called Planning and Land Use 101. This has been a great work effort. Our first training was on July 20th. At the Verdugo Road. The second training we're having is August 17th, 2013 at the Pacoima Family Source Center on Glen Oaks Boulevard. Our next training will be August 24th, 2013 at the Kaiser Permanente Conference Center on Normandy Avenue in Harbor City. And this is really a grassroots training we're doing with Dunn to try and help neighborhood councils understand the land use powers they have and how to work with the city effectively and our stakeholders and getting the vision of their neighborhoods through our planning process realized. So we're very happy to partner with Dunn on making sure that we provide that level of training for our neighborhood councils and actually learn from them also. So we're very excited to participate in that. That concludes my report for today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Legrand. Any questions, comments from Mr. Legrand? No, seeing none. We'll move on. And before we move on to the next items, I do want to clarify that for item number 3, that report will stay in committee. That item will stay in committee pending report back from planning. So it's not going to council. Thank you. So let's move on to items 1 and 2, please. And if we could read those into the record.
Sure, Councilman. Item 1 is a motion by yourself and Mr. Alarcon. It's asking the planning department to report on efforts to revise, update the Quimby and Fin Fee Ordinances. In item 2, again, a motion by yourself, Mr. Alarcon, asking city attorney, planning, and Rec and Parks to prepare an ordinance to revise reference to the public recreation plan.
Thank you, Robert. And before I ask staff up here, I just want to give some background to this. We authored these motions considering the new development activity that we're seeing, the hopefully getting out of the recession activity that we're seeing. And with that, there's going to be a lot more Quimby funds available for the city. Unfortunately, we haven't reviewed our overall Quimby allocation since 1971, and this is a great opportunity for the city to provide public amenities in those areas where these developments occur. There was an audit of the Quimby program in 2008, and it found severe self-imposed limitations in how the city generates and uses Quimby and Fin fees. And so we want to make sure that before we see this renewed development in the city, that we are able to look at the Quimby fee and fin fee allocations and make sure we are maximizing our potential with them. So with that, unless other council members have opening remarks, I'll ask the planning department to come up and give us a report on this, please. Yeah.
Just briefly, wanted to thank you, Chairman, for authoring this motion. This is critically important. We've got these Quimby funds that are generated at project-specific sites that you can only spend within, whether it's a 1 or 2 mile radius, depending on the site and what's done there. But it becomes extremely difficult when you have, whether it's a park or another facility you want to put the money into, it's 2.01 miles away, and you've got other funds you can't pool together. So you've got all these pockets of different Quimby funds sitting around various districts that were meant to enhance and help the community with recreation facilities and park enhancements, and you can't use it at all. Or if you want to acquire additional property, you can't pool the funds together. Although those tools exist and other communities use them, and they're allowed under state law, the city has gone over and above restrictions that haven't been updated, and it is frustrating for the community, for every community, when they're trying to get things done. And so I really applaud your effort in bringing this forward as not only the chairman of this committee, but keeping your laser focus on this, which is so important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. England. Staff, thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Alan Bell with the Planning Department. What I'd like to do is just provide just a very brief overview about the Quimby Code. What are the issues that have been raised based upon the work that the Planning Department has done to date on this particular issue, and then what we see as a reasonable path forward so that we can take some action on this item. As Councilmember Weezar noted, there were several motions that were introduced in 2007 that attacked this particular issue, and then in February of 2008, the city controller issued an audit with various criticisms about the way in which the city administers the Quimby codes, and they instructed that updates to those codes would be necessary. So just a very brief background in terms of what the Quimby Act does and what and how it functions. So it is a 1965 state law. It applies only to subdivisions of residential property. So any parcel map or any tract map, Quimby applies, and we can require either dedication of land or payment of a fee. Under the state code, we can only require dedication of land for projects that have 50 or more units. Under the 1971 ordinance that the council adopted, we do allow any project, regardless of size, to pay a fee in lieu of dedication of land, but it does apply to any project that is subdividing, so those fees must be paid. Typically, developers opt to pay the fee rather than to provide a dedication of land. The fees are based on a per dwelling unit basis, and they range from a low of around $2,000 per unit for a single family zoning to over $4,000 a unit for the high density R5 zone. In 1985, the council adopted an ordinance that expanded the 1971 Quimby regulations through a motion that was sponsored by the former council member Howard Finn, and so we therefore affectionately called the Fee Ordinance, which applies to any residential development project that goes through a zone change. Now, one of the issues that has come up in our review in terms of this particular issue is that the Quimby fee and the fin fee do not apply to market rate residential projects. If it's a market rate residential project and it does not require subdivision and it is not going through a zone change, no fee is paid to the city. One of the things that we have analyzed in terms of our review of this project is that this setup actually it really exacerbates existing social inequities, because most condominium developments and most of the larger projects that go through a zone change, they occur in the more park-rich areas of the city, in the park-poor areas, more economically disadvantaged areas of the city. They don't see that kind of development that generates the fees that would be necessary to pay for parks within those neighborhoods. So one of the other criticisms that we have seen of the existing Quimby regulations is that, again, it favors payment of a fee as opposed to dedication of land, and it's much to the city's advantage if you can get the land to pay for that rather than to have the city go out and then buy a park through the Quimby fees. But yet the current code favors that, and certainly to the city's detriment. One of the other out-of-date elements of the Quimby Code has to do with the credits that are provided to developers that provide on-site recreational and park facilities. Those credits haven't been updated since 1971 to reflect construction costs that have certainly increased over the past 40 years. So as part of the work program effort, it would be prudent to also update those particular credits. One of the things that's interesting about the way Los Angeles implements Quimby is that those credits apply only for residential projects that only are available for the tenants of that particular site. And in our working group meetings, one of the questions is that if a credit is to be given to a developer for Quimby, should that on-site park space and recreational space, should it be public? And right now, it is not. So that would be one of the questions that would be addressed in the update, would be if those credits are to be provided to make them publicly accessible and not just for the private residents of that particular subdivision or development. Another issue has to do with the fee deferral for affordable housing projects. Currently, affordable housing project that provides as little as 20% affordable housing receives a deferral on the entire project. So what that means is that if a mixed income project has 80% market rate housing, no fees are paid on the 80% of those market rate units. That is one of the other issues that has been raised as to whether or not the Quimby fees for the market rate units that are in mixed income housing projects, whether they should be required to pay a fee as well, as opposed to the current model, which provides a blanket exemption for any project, even if it has as little as 20% affordable housing. So when these motions were addressed, the planning department did a great deal of work on this particular project. We were redirected by Plum at that point to do work on the city's comprehensive sign code and the mural ordinance. And as we know, the work that has been done on those two ordinances has consumed the greater part of the last 5 years. We've also worked on starting Recode LA and a number of other important ordinances, including, for example, the Community Care Facilities Ordinance. The department hasn't had the resources to address this issue because of those other work program commitments, including our community planning work program effort. Just in terms of the bigger picture, in terms of the department's staffing levels and our resources, we have 300 positions within the department. We have an 18% vacancy rate. That means that about 55 positions within the department are currently vacant. We are preparing a comprehensive managed hiring plan to submit to the managed hiring committee in September, and we hope that as part of that managed hiring process that we will receive authorization to fill those 55 vacant positions. On the policy side of the department, we have 55 staff persons that work on community plans, citywide code amendments, and that would be one of the persons that would be working on this particular effort, and we have a 24% vacancy rate on that side. So the big issue certainly for the department to make sure that we are not in a position of trying to rob Peter to pay Paul, having to defer a community plan or another important work program item to make sure that we would have the resources that an issue of this importance absolutely deserves, is that we would want to take a look at our entire work program after we go through managed hiring, see if additional position authorities are needed, look at what the funding basis may be for an additional position authority. I'm very optimistic that within 30 to 60 days we would be able to come back to this committee with an action plan that would lay out a roadmap for this committee to take in terms of making sure that we would have the resources that an issue of this nature deserves, and that we'd be able to address this on an expeditious time path. We would not recommend connecting this to Recode LA, which is a 5-year work program effort. It's long overdue to address this particular issue. We would want to come back with an action plan with the assistance of the Department of Recreation and Parks and also the City Administrative Officer to find out how this can be moved forward. I would want to make the observation that we do have a current contract with the County Public Health Department. It's a $1.25 million contract to prepare the Health and Wellness Chapter. I know that the county is very, very concerned about this issue because they see a direct link between public health and provision of parks, particularly in park-poor areas of the city and the more economically disadvantaged areas of the city. I will be meeting with them this Friday to see if there's a possibility of generating additional funding based upon our existing contract with the county to address this issue. I also know that the California Endowment, we haven't approached them, but I think it would be prudent for the City of Los Angeles to approach the California Endowment. The endowment is providing additional $300,000 in grant funding to the City of Los Angeles as an adjunct to the funding that we are receiving from the County Health Department for the Health and Wellness Chapter. So in summary, I'm very optimistic that we would be able to find grant resources to address this particular issue. I believe that in working with the CAO in Recreation and Parks that we can identify the position authorities and the other flexibilities that we need with our existing staffing positions to address this issue, and that we could come back with an action plan within 30 to 60 days that would enable us to really pursue this long overdue issue.
Great. Thank you, and thank you for that report. And we've had some discussions with the CAO planning and Rec and Parks, and I think they are in concurrence with what you just mentioned in terms of resource allocation, making sure that we have a pre-plan in place so that we know what exactly we are or how we are approaching this. So we've come up with some instructions along with the CAO planning and Rec and Parks that we will provide for us to move forward, and then we'll go into public comment. And colleagues, if you would agree, after we could take action on this, it's to instruct the planning department to move forward immediately with pre-planning work on a Quimby study, including Quimby interest and FinFee. Instruct Recreation and Parks, Planning, and CAO to report back in 30 to 60 days with an action plan on this study, including necessary personnel authorities, financing, and opportunities for outside grant partnerships. And I think that will encapsulate what you just mentioned. Okay, great, thanks. So with that, we'll go to public comment. Thank you. And our first speaker is Joel Miller. After Joel Miller is Alina Bookdale.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Joel Miller. I'm a land use consultant with SOMAS. Our address is 555 South Flower, Los Angeles. I'm here to support the amendments to the proposed ordinances, but I do want to point out an inequity in the ordinances that currently exist. Has been mentioned this ordinance was adopted in 1971, or at least initiated in 1971. So for over 40 years, the Quimby assessments have been adjusted. There's a provision within the code that allows for indexing to occur on an annual basis, but no adjustment has been made for the Quimby credits in the last 40 years, and I've been pointing this out for at least 25 years now. So I would appreciate it if you direct the staff, and it's actually included in your motion, that they look at the credits as well. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Yes, we would do that. I've been asked by my two colleagues to ask staff to include that in there as well, that examination. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alina Bookdale. I'm the Executive Director of the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. The mission of the Land Trust is to build healthier, stronger, safer neighborhoods through the creation of urban parks and gardens in LA's most vulnerable communities. We want to thank Councilmember Huizar for introducing this motion and the Plum Committee for considering much-needed improvements to LA's Quimby policy and program. The Land Trust has recently broadened its scope of work to address policies that contribute to or exacerbate park inequities in Los Angeles. Our initial foray into the policy arena has focused on Quimby. With the help of consultants Don Spivak and Elva Yanez, the Land Trust recently completed an analysis of the Los Angeles Quimby policy and program elements. We've reviewed the draft motion and believe it is an important first step to address the problems of Quimby here in Los Angeles. We support the motion's call for city staff to develop the draft ordinance language to amend and update the municipal code. We believe there are a number of improvements that need to be made to LA's Quimby ordinance, including but not necessarily limited to the service radius limitations of the public recreation plan outlined in the motion. These broader improvements must address key obstacles identified previously by council leadership and departmental staff, and more recently, the Land Trust analysis. We believe there is a broad and diverse base of support for improving LA's Quimby policy and program so that they operate at a higher level of performance and better support the needs of LA's most vulnerable communities. The Land Trust looks forward to sharing our analysis and recommendations with committee members and department staff and moving forward this much-needed improvements. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to provide that testimony to give us a broader view of the issues before us. I think that's it for public comment. Mr. Englander, you had a request?
Just in addition, if we could ask staff to undertake a part of that study to include sort of a roadmap and a guide of when and what particular projects you would apply Quimby and which ones specifically you wouldn't. Since in the past there's been some inconsistencies on projects on when they would apply and when they wouldn't, so we'd have clear direction. It would be black and white on very specifically what projects would be included and what wouldn't. That would be helpful.
Okay, we'll make that amendment with no objection. So we'll give that direction to staff and be back within 30 to 60 days on that report. Thank you. Next items, we could go to items 4 and 5, please.
Item 4 and 5, council members. There are 3 appeals that were submitted by the homeowners of Encino, the Sherman Oaks residents for a safe environment, and Marshall Long. This is a mixed-use project located in CD4. Item 4 are the land use entitlements. Item 5 relates to the environmental appeal.
Thank you. We could have staff give us a brief update on this item.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Nicholas Hendricks. I'm with the Department of City Planning. I was a hearing officer for this case and provide the recommendations to the City Planning Commission. A little background on this project. It originally started off as a 500-unit mixed-use project. It was therefore reduced to 399 units. And an EIR was prepared for the project and was released in 2010, the year of 2010. The final environmental impact report was circulated this year. The project was originally proposed to provide 399 units reduced from 500 with a floor area ratio of 2.75, a height of 100 feet, and those included specific plan exceptions for those requests. Planning staff decided that in order to reduce the project's impacts, to reduce the overall height and scale of the project, we made a recommendation to reduce the floor area to 2.25, reduce the residential density from 399 units to 325 units, and to also limit the height to 82 feet, which would be consistent with the mixed-use provisions of the Ventura-specific plan. In the end, we felt that this overall reduction would help reduce traffic impacts, would help improve the aesthetic character of the site, while still retaining the amenities that were proposed as part of the project, which included a 13,000 square foot public plaza, park-like amenities with recreational opportunities for residents. The project also incorporates transportation demand management programs, which offers discount bus tickets. It has other provisions for residents to take alternative transportation opportunities. Also includes bike sharing as well as car sharing programs. The environmental impact report evaluated all aspects of the project's impacts. There are unmitigated impacts to traffic, noise, air quality. Most of the unmitigated impacts are during the construction phase, so they're temporary in nature. However, there are intersections within the area that will not be mitigated beyond an insignificant level. However, mitigation measures are incorporated and memorialized as part of the queue conditions of the project, and those mitigation measures are considered to be at the 500 larger scale residential components. So none of the mitigation measures are being reduced or omitted as a result of the reductions. So in conclusion, the appeals are general appeals of the overall decision. The appeals question whether or not the project is consistent with the general plan. The appeals also include challenges to whether or not we can make findings. Planning staff has reviewed all the appeal points and disagree with the appeal, and we recommend, based on the project's compliance with the intent and purpose of the specific plan, that you deny the appeals and sustain the actions of the determination of the City Planning Commission. That concludes my summary of the case. If you have any questions, I'll be available.
Thank you. Just to reiterate your final point, which is you reviewed the appeals. There are 3 separate appeals?
There are 3 separate appeals. 2 of the appeals are virtually the same. They have the exact identical points. There may be some differences between the 2, but in general, all 3 appeals cover the same points, and they challenge the findings. They challenge whether or not the project is consistent with the plan. We find that the project is consistent with the plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So we will now go to the appellants and provide the appellants. We have 1 to the 3 appellants. We have a number of speakers. Let's go first to the appellants. Marshall Long, and then Elliot Cohen, and Brad Torgan. Yeah, since these are the appellants, let's provide each appellant 3 minutes to speak. And we'll be flexible with that since they are appellants. Yeah.
3?
3 minutes, yes, sir.
Okay.
We're a little flexible since you're the appellant, so you have more or less 3. We want to take a little more time.
Yeah, it was
that's
20
fine.
minutes at the CPC hearing, so...
Okay, we have a number of speakers on this item. We're going to try to fit everyone in.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
My name is Marshall Long. I'm the Land Use Planning Chair for Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, and I'm speaking on their behalf. Homeowners organizations such as SOHA have developed over the years in response to excessive developments in their neighborhoods. We as an organization work on improving our neighborhoods, not by opposing all developments, but by working towards appropriately sized developments in compliance with existing land use and planning laws that are on the books. SOHA and other similar organizations welcome members from residents living in the area. Unlike neighborhood councils, we are not supported by the funding from the city. We are funded by 2,300 dues-paying families and hold monthly meetings where we host prominent speakers to discuss the issues of the day. We've been pleased to have council candidates and council members talk at our meetings, including some here today. I'll skip just to speed things up. Many of our members have worked with others in having similar interests to develop specific plans, including the Ventura Boulevard specific plan adopted as law by the city. This sets limits on the density, height, and types of developments along and adjacent to Ventura Boulevard corridor. A number of other communities have developed similar specific plans in their own neighborhoods, and these our plans are written to provide clear guidelines both for the public and the developer as to what the level of developments are appropriate in a given area. As a board member for SOHA and chair of its land use committee, I'm familiar with the IBT project proposed for a site adjacent to Sepulveda Boulevard, north of Ventura Boulevard. The lot in question has been owned by the developer for 34 years and is now vacant because the developer has chosen to clear it. It's clearly a challenging site for a developer. The nearest proposed residential tower is located 35 feet from the 405 freeway, near its junction with a 101. As such, noise levels impacting the structures are close to CNEL 80, 50% louder than the noise level at the end of the west end of the LAX runways. These levels exceed the allowable noise standards adopted by the City of Los Angeles in the noise element of general plan for multifamily residences and the state standards on which they are based. And I am providing an exhibit. The existing traffic in the area is totally gridlocked. The junction of Ventura Boulevard and Sepulveda in Sherman Oaks is one of the worst intersections in the city. It has taken me more than 45 minutes to drive through it in the morning. The original IVT project proposed to add over 2 million annual traffic trips to Sepulveda Boulevard near the intersection with Ventura. The reduced project will add about 80% of that number. The EIR and nearby intersections in the area have negative traffic impacts that cannot be mitigated.
If you could wrap it up, please.
Okay. Recent researchers at UCLA and USC have published a study on ambient air pollution and autism in Los Angeles County. This relates the incidence of autism to nearness to freeways, and has shown in study areas, including Sherman Oaks, a 12 to 15% increase in the incidence of autism. The AQMD has issued a guidance for locating residential projects, and that was used in the Kasdan West, I believe, to move their project from 350 feet to 500 feet away from a freeway. Okay. This is 35 feet away from a freeway.
Great. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, do we have a question for you, sir?
I have left written copies of the...
Okay. Oh, did you include it in your letter that you'd submitted, it indicated there was a 135-page petition as well, but I didn't see it in the package.
Okay, that was probably Mr. Torgan's package. I left the package with the secretary at the beginning of the meeting, and I also emailed it to planning deputies in your office.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Elliot Cohen, and after Elliot, Brad Torgan.
Hello, thank you for hearing me. My name is Elliot Cohen. I'm representing Homeowners of Encino, which is a California 501c4 corporation whose members live and work in Encino and Sherman Oaks and will be severely impacted by the traffic, parking, congestion, noise, and air quality from this massive 325 apartment project and mega retail development. Homeowners of Encino insist that the project meet all the requirements for the Ventura-Cahuenga Boulevard Corridor-specific plan, all current zoning and codes. This was the implicit contract with the community when M. David Paul bought the property. They should also be required to mitigate all the negative traffic impacts they are creating. There is widespread opposition to the project, contrary to what the developer and their cheerleaders will tell you. We have 150 pages of signed petitions opposing the development. I think it would be instructive, since so much of what the developer wants to do is in violation of the Ventura-Cahuenga Boulevard specific plan. And we should take a moment to consider the intent of this plan, renewed and reaffirmed 12 years ago, almost to the day by the City Council. And let's consider whether the developer has met their obligations under the Ventura-Cahuenga plan. And I personally wonder, having to be here to plead to you to follow the existing audience, if we have lost all institutional memory in this city. Does the past city council decree by ordinance not make any difference? Or does it make a difference that an army of a platoon of lawyers and consultants is in tow here for M. David Paul? So what does the Ventura-Cahuenga Corridor Plan suggest? And this is written on August 18, 2001. The Ventura-Cahuenga Boulevard Corridor is still experiencing serious traffic, transportation, and density problems, which in a number of locations are classified as unacceptable, and after the slow pace of development during the recent recession, new developments in the corridor once again are developing beyond the capacity of the transportation infrastructure. And may I submit that the Ventura Boulevard and Sepulveda Boulevard intersections figured high on the council's mind. Whereas the amendments, expansion of pedestrian-oriented areas and designation of the regionally impacted areas and restricted use areas address the increasing traffic in general by increasing development, by encouraging pedestrian activity and downsizing the amount of car trips. The developer's own consultant said there are 5,800 car trips a day. This does not diminish car trips on the Ventura-Sepulveda corridor. Whereas, I quote again from the document, historical approaches to building and financing transportation capital improvements no longer appear sufficient to meet the needs of the corridor. As a result, new approaches, including restriction on future developments, must be devised to ensure that Ventura Boulevard remains viable as San Fernando Valley's premier commercial corridor. And I would go on to say that the developer is building in the most polluted spot in the San Fernando Valley, ignoring AQMD guidelines, LA City Planning Commission guidelines, and all this. And I submit to you that over time, the adverse health effects that this building, so close to the freeways, will create will someday cause giant class action lawsuits for the developer and the city council. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there, sir, we have a question for you, sir?
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 I just for the record, I'm just trying to put my records straight here. So you're with the Homeowners of Encino?
Correct.
But you're not Jerry Silver.
I'm not Jerry Silver.
You don't look like Jerry Silver.
Thank you.
And he was, is he not here on behalf of, because it was written as Jerry Silver as...
Jerry Silver couldn't attend. I was asked to come down.
On his behalf?
On his behalf.
Not an organization, but as an individual? Because I'm just trying to...
Yeah, I'm from Homeowners of Encino, his organization.
His organization. Okay, because he filed as an appellant as an individual, not as an organization. That's fine.
Okay.
I just want to make a note of it.
Okay.
No, okay. No problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Brad Torgan?
Thank you. I'm Brad Torgan on behalf of Sherman Oaks Residents for a Safe Environment. Recently, your council passed the Kasdan West project, and what you did there is instructive for this project as well, because they've got a very fundamental similarity. Now, staff has gone out of their way and the applicant has gone out of their way to try and distinguish it, but really that fundamental similarity remains. Someone sought entitlements to build a lot of apartments within 500 feet of a freeway. In Kasdan West, it was within 300 feet. Here it's 35 feet. In Kasdan West, you said that was bad public policy and that was bad for public health. You should say the same here. Now, what does that mean for this project? I've acknowledged in previous correspondence that we understand that there's already some residential zoning on the property and that most of the property is within 500 feet of not one but two freeways. So I'm not going to stand here and say don't build any multifamily at all. But if the original Kasdan West proposal was bad for public health and public policy, what it means here is you shouldn't be granting exceptions or variances to the specific plan in order to increase density that close to the freeway. And the density should be limited to what's in the specific plan of an FAR of 1.5. There are a couple of deficiencies in the EIR I'd like to mention. One is the cumulative impacts analysis, and in particular, the related projects list generated in 2008. We've identified at least two substantial projects with EIRs that were in the works at the time that included Toscano on their respective projects lists, but that don't appear on Toscano's related project lists. Two of them are the Universal City Specific Plan and the Fashion Square expansion. And I believe those EIRs have been certified, so the city's on record as indeed those are related projects. And they're not insubstantial projects. Universal City alone is about 1.5 million square feet of new office space, 500 hotel rooms, and over 2,000 multifamily units. At the very least, projects that include Toscano on their related projects lists need to be included on Toscano's. The left hand needs to know what the right hand is doing. That hasn't occurred here yet. The applicant has cast the dialogue we've been having over transportation impacts as a battle of experts. And actually, it's much more a matter of common sense, and I'd like to give two details. We noted a design flaw in the project that creates a traffic hazard. When commercial trucks headed to the loading dock make a right turn off of Camarillo onto the fire lane at the rear of project, they have to swing into oncoming traffic. And that's a safety impact not discussed, let alone analyzed. The response we got was that the project will arrange for supermarket deliveries off-peak to the extent that's possible, and they'll have personnel out there directing traffic whenever there's a delivery. Really? Two comments here. There's no enforcement mechanism for that. But second, while they do have a traffic consultant there as an expert, I doubt that extends to grocery store logistics. We're being told that in order to take care of this problem, there's going to be a flag guy standing, holding up traffic from the project when supermarket trucks are coming in. I don't think that passes the common sense test, and I think you owe it to yourself as decision makers to find out if that's feasible before you approve the project. The last example is another traffic safety issue. There's an alley off the south side of Camarillo that leads to another apartment complex garage as well as a motel. In the evening rush hour, that alley is going to be blocked by cars trying to get out going eastbound on Camarillo. So anybody trying to make a left turn into that alley isn't going to be able to do so, and that's going to queue cars back up into the intersection of Camarillo and Sepulveda, creating a significant safety hazard. The responses we got were, we'll do pavement markers saying don't block, and the other response was people won't make unsafe left turns because that's against the vehicle code. And really, again, I go to common sense. I think we've all seen that those pavement markers are honored in the breach rather than the observance, except thankfully in front of fire stations. And I bet there's not one person in here who has either seen or been that person who's tried to be the last one through a red light only to get caught in the intersection because cars are stopped on the other side of the intersection. I've heard the buzzer, so my time is up. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we'll hear from the applicant. And I have two people listed, David Goldberg and R.J. Comer. One of you want to go first?
Good afternoon, Chair Weezar, Councilmember Cedillo and Englander. I'm David Goldberg of Armbruster, Goldsmith, and Delvac, counsel to the applicant M. David Paul Associates. And just initial, could we request 10 minutes just so we could collectively respond to all three appeals?
Well, we've allocated 3 minutes per person. I mean, I'll be flexible with that just as I was with the others.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Weezar. Then I will go through this a lot quicker. What you have before you is a mixed-use project of 325 units, a TOD project that's right for the site. It's above 52,000 square feet of ground floor, community-serving retail, and it will provide a 13,000 square foot plaza. The project has evolved over a number of years in response to community input, and we are very proud that we had the endorsement of the Neighborhood Council, unanimous approval and recommendations of the City Planning Commission, and even a group of homeowners, United Neighbors 818, who live across the street from the project, who once opposed, now support this project. We've also have support from transit advocacy groups, FAST and the Transit Coalition, as well as from business groups in the area. This project will revitalize the area. We've addressed community concerns. The zoning is outdated. It's inconsistent with the regional center land use designation for the site, and so a rezoning is appropriate, and the City Planning Commission has confirmed that. This is site is a great location for infill development, but it does have constraints, as even acknowledged by the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, Mr. Marshall Long. There's a 26-foot high sound wall that lines the site, and so that creates constraints that has generated the need to develop the residential on top of a podium, which has created the need for some additional height. With that said, we've worked hard to address community concerns. We've reduced the project by 175 units. We're now at 325. The height has come down to 82 feet. It's only 2 feet higher now than what the Sherman Oaks homeowners said they found acceptable. You hear a lot of concern about the FAR. That's only one metric. A project, a big box retail on this site at the 1.5 to 1 FAR allowed by the specific plan would actually double the traffic. So you shouldn't just look at FAR, you should look at the use on the site, and a mixed-use transit-oriented development is really a less impactful traffic generator. We have intersections that we're mitigating, 7 of them. There will still be impacts that remain. We've acknowledged that. DOT, to address that's also imposed a mitigation fund for the project, and we have a very aggressive transportation demand management program for this site. You heard the planning department staff address that, and we're also looking to fund a transportation management organization for the area. With that, we would request your approval. My partner, R.J. Comer, will address the issues raised in the appeal. We also understand that the council office will be requesting the inclusion of some additional conditions of approval that arose from the community input process. We support the inclusion of those conditions. Thank you.
Thank you. R.J. Comer? And I'm sorry, before you begin, we are closing the speaker card submission on this. We usually stop it when the item begins. I was being flexible with that, but we keep getting them, so there are no more cards that are accepted and being submitted for number 4 and 5. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Huizar and honorable council members. My name is R.J. Comer on behalf of the applicant. There have been countless reams of paper on this project, and the city planning staff and the city planning commission have been very exacting in making sure that we've responded to every single issue that you heard today from our opponents, and the administrative record is filled with data responding to those issues. And I'm going to touch on just a few of them in the 3 minutes that I have. First is air quality. I was in this room when the City Planning Commission passed its air quality guidance on residential development near freeways. And I spoke to the City Planning Commission about that guidance. The City Planning Commission approved this project. The reason they approved this project is because this project has one of the most aggressive air quality mitigation measures that this city has ever seen. This project has one of the most detailed health risk assessment studies that this city has ever seen. And every single study that has been mentioned to this city has been responded to by our air quality expert and shown that this project complies with the Air Quality Management District guidelines, complies with the CARB guidelines, and complies with the US EPA guidelines. A specific plan exception. Specific plans expressly allow exceptions. They allow exceptions when sites are unique. This site is unique. It's on the fringe of the specific plan area in the first place. One of our opponents admitted that it's a challenging site. And the specific plan exceptions before you today that the planning staff and the City Planning Commission have vetted very thoroughly have determined that because this site is so unique and because some kind of development is necessary, those specific plan exceptions are also necessary. You heard that this project caused 2 million daily trips. That's just wrong. 325 units causes 4,600 daily trips. Now that is a lot of trips. And no one is going to stand before you today and say the traffic isn't difficult in this area. It is. But this project mitigates almost all of its potentially significant traffic impacts. This project creates a new traffic fund that has never existed before in this area of the San Fernando Valley. And this project includes a TDM plan that is one of the most aggressive and innovative in this city's history. Will it mitigate every traffic impact? No, it will not. But will it set a standard for how do you develop residential and mixed use in an area that's already impacted by traffic? That it does. It does set that standard. And when you talk about new approaches under the specific plan, our transportation demand management plan is one of those new approaches. You also heard that the specific plan limits density. It doesn't limit density. Density is how many units per acre or how many units per gross lot area. The specific plan does not limit density. It limits floor area ratio. And the floor area ratio on this project has been reduced since it was first applied for. And wisely, through the planning staff and through the City Planning Commission, it has been a reduced project. Every issue before you, including, and I just want to touch on the Kasdan project, which was mentioned before, your city planning staff has made specific findings about the Kasdan project. They included a table in the findings showing why this project is different than the Kasdan project. And the one thing I want to share with you is that the Kasdan project said that no residential unit can be within 500 feet of a freeway. If that same condition were imposed on this project, it would be a moratorium on residential development. There's no way we could do that. But this project, unlike the Kasdan project, has the most aggressive and detailed health risk assessment and air quality mitigation measures this city has ever seen. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions. We have all of our technical experts here to answer any questions you may have. Oh, and I'm sorry, I wanted to thank staff for the amount of work they did on this, because it was immense.
Okay, thank you very much. And now we'll go into other public commenters. We have over 25 cards. We will provide each person a minute to make their provide their comment, and we'll begin with the support. The first is Louis Krokover, and then Kevin Tamaki. You may begin. We're doing 1 minute, City Clerk.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. I want to first thank Planning Department staff and Councilmember LaBonge and his staff for their due diligence in working with this, as well as with the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council for their effort of over 17 months to come to a resolution on this project. I'm speaking solely on behalf as a resident of Sherman Oaks, California, and I look to you guys to basically research as best you can, determine an aspect of possibility for this project. In its reduction state, the project is viable and beneficial long-term for the community of Sherman Oaks and the city of Los Angeles. And I hope that you will consider that as a viable point in your decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Tamaki. After Kevin Tamaki is Doug Arsenault.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kevin Tamaki. I'm with AT&T External Affairs. AT&T has been in this area for over 100 years, ever since Daltone came to the San Fernando Valley. And we have an employee location just 2 blocks away from the proposed site, where we have over 65 employees. And we see here a great opportunity where our employees would be able to shop, to work, to live near a development that has many amenities and would be a very appropriate mixed use. So bringing these opportunities of both residential and retail is not only smart, but is economically beneficial to Sherman Oaks and the Valley. And I am kind of picturing just AT&T employees being able to walk a couple blocks to work, to shop, and to enjoy the amenities there. It's great to have this opportunity because I think downtown should have all the fun. The Valley should as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Doug Arsenault, Julie Edelstein.
Good afternoon. My name is Doug Arsenault, the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, representing more than 380 businesses throughout the San Fernando Valley. VICA strongly supports the revised Il Villaggio Toscano project, which underwent a remarkable decade-long process, including working with the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council for more than 2 years to ensure the best possible final project proposal. A committed long-time member of the Valley business community, M. David Paul has made several reductions in units, reduced building height, eliminated 2 specific plan exception requests, incorporated an extensive list of design features, and volunteered 20 other conditions requested by the Neighborhood Council. All of this hard work and incorporation of feedback is a testament to the project's commitment to designing a gathering place that serves the needs of residents, customers, neighbors, and other businesses. Il Villaggio Toscano is a model project for fulfilling our region's air quality and TOD goals, outlined in AB 32 by then Assemblymember Pavley and the Sustainable Communities Act, SB 375 by Senate President Pro Tem Steinberg. We encourage this committee to move this project forward as soon as possible. Every day that this development is delayed equates to lost commerce for Valley business owners and lost tax revenue for community investment. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Julie Edelstein. After Julie is Stan Gerson.
My name is Julie Edelstein, and I grew up in the Sherman Oaks area with family still living there. I support this project and feel it would be an enhancement to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Stan Gerson, Ron Ziff.
Hello, my name's Stan Gerson. I happen to live in the area, I work in the area, and I'm on the Chamber of Commerce in the area. Now, this particular area that we're talking about, if you can look at this picture, this was Sherman Oaks. That's the intersection 100 years ago. It doesn't look like that anymore. And I guarantee you, over the years, people have who lived there like this wanted it to be the same way. It isn't. And we can't even think in today's viewpoint. We have to look in the future. And the developers have looked in the future, planned for the future. And I will tell you, I think it's really a great project for Sherman Oaks. And I hope that you'll agree with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ron Ziff, then Robert Rodine.
I'm Ron Ziff, Chair of the Land Use Committee, Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council. We worked on this project for 21 months, heard 14 hours of testimony from 200 speakers. What was once, and we reshaped the project with our community. What was once an 8-story building is now 4 stories, step back to 6. Our conditions have been accepted by the opponents of the project, by the council office, by the zoning administrator, and by the applicant. We urge you to pass this and approve it. I'd like to say one other thing about the perception of our hard work. A Los Angeles newspaper has mischaracterized the neighborhood council as NIMBYs that oppose housing projects. Nothing could be further from the truth. That newspaper could have found out the truth had they attended just one of our meetings or made a phone call. They didn't do any of those things. This project does meet our standards. We have reshaped other projects consistently for the past 11 years, and we ask that you pass this one despite what the newspaper tells you about us.
Thank you. Robert, and then Bruce Gridley.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Robert Rodine. I'm both a resident of Sherman Oaks and have my business there. I think what has been said about traffic really is preposterous. About 10 years ago, I was speaking with Hassan Ikarta of SCAG when he was just the transportation director there, and he made the observation that the traffic problems that we experience at Sepulveda Boulevard and Ventura Boulevard begin in the Camarillo Plain. And to suggest that a local building project is going to significantly exacerbate traffic coming from Camarillo and Simi Valley and all those areas to the north is just preposterous. The other thing I'd like to mention is that this project brings aesthetics to our community that we have not seen in the 40 years that I've lived there. And I really applaud that, and I think it's a wonderful contribution. There are countless authorizations. This project went through the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Land Committee for years before it got here, and it made a lot of concessions, and there were a lot of adjustments made to gain the council's approval. It also did the same thing at the Planning Commission, and I think that they've shown extremely good faith and strongly encourage you to approve the project. Thank you for the time.
Great. Thank you very much. Bruce, and then Jason Sweem.
Hello, my name is Bruce Gridley, speaking on behalf of the project. I'm the president of the Sherman Oaks Presbyterian Church within walking distance of this project. I have participated in the neighborhood council meetings and the other sessions in which this project has been discussed. I think the thing that impresses me most about this project is that it responds to what I think is the general perception of what is the way our community should grow. If our community is going to grow, we need to provide for our citizens the type of amenities which they need. For example, the Sherman Oaks Galleria does that. The LA Fitness Health Spa to its north does that. We are developing a concentration of services that people need, all of which are within walking distance. And of course, our Sherman Oaks Presbyterian Church was in walking distance. We'd like people to walk over. That would be very nice if they would do that. But the point is that if we provide for folks what it is that they need within a walking distance or a short transportation distance, then we've achieved really a worthwhile planning goal, which is to concentrate the needs of people where the people are.
Thank you. Jason Sweem, Adriana Fernandez.
Hi, I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
I'm looking forward to this project. I live about 2 blocks away from it. I'm a homeowner about 2 blocks away from the project. The investment that they're making, I've seen that it's about $150 million. To have that kind of investment made in the neighborhood where I live, I'm really in favor of that. My family, we walk to the Galleria a lot. It would be really great to have a really nice spot, another place to go to in the valley that's within walking distance. One thing that nobody has brought up as part of the project is to improve the median that runs along Sepulveda Boulevard on the other side of the Galleria. So, with the new plaza and that median, I mean, it's going to completely change. I mean, Sepulveda will be a completely different place. We need that. There's a lot of Sherman Oaks that is still old and kind of decrepit, and it would be really nice to see this part of our neighborhood get reinvigorated. Thank you.
Thank you. Adriana Fernandez, Jeffrey Hartzow.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Adriana Fernandez, and I live and work in Sherman Oaks, and I strongly support the El Villaggio Toscano project. This development is desperately needed in Sherman Oaks. When I was searching for a home, I was disappointed by the lack of quality apartments. While Sherman Oaks may appear to be oversaturated with apartments, many have not been renovated in years. As a longtime renter, I've watched the discussion of this project over the past few years, and I was impressed that the neighborhood council was able to bring stakeholders together to find a compromise that ensured the best project for Sherman Oaks. Recently, I've heard from new groups that are trying to drown out the voice of groups that engaged in this process. As a Sherman Oaks resident, I am very disappointed that these groups are being regarded above residents that engaged in the process, particularly renters. I recognize that homeowners are perceived as more permanent residents and therefore are given a more prominent voice, but my generation is proud to be renters and deserve to be given a proper voice in the Sherman Oaks community. The neighborhood council process did just that, and their work deserves recognition as the voice of the greater community. I look forward to El Villaggio Toscano being built and hope that the council will move forward with development. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey and Garrett.
Good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Hartzow. I'm a 30-year resident and homeowner in Sherman Oaks. I'm also a member of the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association and an active volunteer at the very nice Sherman Oaks Park, which serves through the AYSO function there some 2,000 families. I want to speak in support of this project for 2 reasons. One, because I firmly believe in a mixed-use, high-density movement along Ventura Boulevard. With time, that will help, I hope, generate a truly useful public transport system. And secondly, as mentioned or at least alluded to earlier, I think that the use of Quimby funds for recreational improvement of Van Nuys, Sherman Oaks, and other parks would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. And Garrett, Eric Selvison.
A little shorter. Hi, I'm Ann Garrett. I have been a resident in Encino for over 10 years. I'm ingrained in the valley, and I, along with many of my friends and neighbors who have written you letters, unfortunately they couldn't be here today due to work constraints, I wanted to let you know that in Encino we strongly support this project and urge you to pass it. We are very interested in having a really nice option for retail. A specialty grocery store would be wonderful. I drive by this area often, and I would just like to say that I strongly support it. The outdoor space is going to be beautiful and something that we can use, and really more than anything, this is a tasteful, beautiful place that the developers put a lot into. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Eric Selvison, Sue Steinberg.
My name is Eric Salveson. I've lived and worked in the area for over 30 years and fully support the City of LA's approval of this project. It will bring immense benefits to the Sherman Oaks area and all the residents in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. Sue Steinberg, George Deby.
Hi, I'm here today representing United Neighbors 818. We're the homeowners group most immediately impacted because we're the closest. We're right to the east of this proposed project. United Neighbors was initially formed to oppose this very project. However, after many meetings and several years of getting together with the applicant, we have decided that the project, scaled back as it is and with the conditions that they volunteered for, that we are now supportive of the project and we urge you to go ahead and pass it. We'd like to thank the applicant for working with us. Like I said, it took a lot of time and effort, and also Councilmember Labange's office, who's done a great job with this. We really appreciate it. But again, we'd like to support it, United Neighbors 818, with the conditions that they've already agreed to. Thank you.
Thank you. George Debe.
Hello, my name is George Debe. I support the
George, can you
development...
do me a favor and bring the microphone down, please, so we can...
I support the development project and the funds to be used to fix the fields. I myself have been playing on the fields and got hurt by slipping on a concrete rock. I have also seen my friends with dislocated ankles by tripping on rocks. I'd like the fields to be repaired. Thank you.
Thank you. It's summertime. Otherwise, I'd ask where is it school time or not, but... LAUSD started today, right? So I'm not sure if you're in LAUSD or not. Lisa Petrus. Now we're going to the opposed. Lisa Petrus and Ann Walnum.
Thank you for your time. I personally went door to door to my neighborhood and had petitions signed, spent a weekend at a grocery store having petitions signed. And without exception, every single person is against this project at the size that it is. It is just way too big for the neighborhood. We are all pro-development. My neighbors basically given up coming down here because this project has been pushed through and rubber-stamped all the way through planning, through Mr. Labange's office. We've been told that if the councilman approves it, then you guys are going to approve it, and that you can't fight City Hall. I'm here to prove otherwise. And I hope that you take into consideration the group that was just up, 818. That's a handful of neighbors. I was working with the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association and the Encino Homeowners Association, and I can tell you by going door to door and speaking to my neighbors, they do not want this project the size that it is. It is too big. And people keep mentioning the traffic. Oh, well, there'll be traffic. I live in that neighborhood. We cannot take any more traffic through there, especially 1.8 million cars. Thank you.
Thank you. Ann Walnum, you're on this item, right? Yeah, we had I'm sorry, yes, you were at number 6. We put this in this pile. Steve Afriat and Barry Johnson. Three on this item.
Good afternoon, council members. Stephen Afriat. I'm here representing the Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, and I'm a 20-year resident of Sherman Oaks. I'm glad they're going to be approving the median strip because I'll have plenty of time to look at it while I'm sitting in traffic trying to traverse down Sepulveda Boulevard through Ventura Boulevard, which is one of the busiest intersections in the entire city. We're talking about 5,800 traffic trips. They say 4,600. Granted, there's probably confusion about that, and that's because the Planning Commission approved a reduced project that was not one of the project alternatives. This project hasn't been studied, the traffic hasn't been updated, and we believe that it's very flawed in terms of your ability to approve it today. We would respectfully request that this committee hold this item, direct the planning staff to further study traffic and other impacts based on a project that has not been studied by Planning Commission or through the CEQA process, allow the public to comment on those impacts, and then bring this back when we can all be better informed as to how this project will affect this community. Thank you very much, council members.
Thank you. Barry Johnson.
Barry Johnson, Studio City resident. Unfortunately, my community of Studio City isn't in a bubble, and the effects of what goes on in Sherman Oaks, unfortunately, don't stay in Sherman Oaks. I support these appeals. I do not support exceptions to the specific plan, which the communities along Ventura Boulevard fought so fiercely for many years ago. I'm proud to say that Studio City's Neighborhood Council has not approved any exceptions to that plan in its 11-year existence. And I just wanted to bring up the culture of build big developers. It's always ask for everything you can. We started at 500, then 300, 399, then 325. But it's always started at a big number, and then they look like the good guys because they came down to 325. But in reality, it probably should have started at 325 and come down from there.
Thank you. And we have a general comment on this item, David Rankel. And then we'll hear from the Council District Representative, Jonathan Brand.
Good afternoon, David Rankel. I live close by, and really, truly, we know something has to be built on that land. There's no question. The question is simply how large and what. I find myself often leaving Sherman Oaks and going north and into Mr. Englander's district to do my shopping and dining. Sherman Oaks is too jam-packed. Traffic is a nightmare, and our buildings are getting larger and larger. We simply ask that the project comply with the specific plan or be reduced even further. In looking at the project, there is no true public give-back in terms of low-income housing, affordable housing for seniors. It's a for-profit project. So the community doesn't feel that it should sustain any potential future burden from it if nothing's being given back to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan Brand.
Chairman Weezar, council members, my name is Jonathan Brand. I'm with Tom LaBonge's office. This has been a proposal that has been in the process for years and has been subject to a full environmental review. Sherman Oaks has several long-standing and well-regarded community groups: Sherman Oaks Homeowners Association, Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council, the Chamber of Commerce, and United Neighbors 818, a group of residents adjacent to the site who have been working with the next-door Galleria, Sherman Oaks Galleria, for years. Now, we take all of their input seriously and have heard from all of these groups. They have all worked on this project for years and have all offered different recommendations on how to move forward. That said, we feel that city planning and CPC's recommendation of a further reduced project in both density and height incorporates a fair mix and balance of the feedback this project has received from these groups. That, combined with the required mitigations, conditions, and continued neighborhood consultation, gives us a proposal that the council office can support. Please see the amending motion that ensures continued community consultation post-approval for neighborhood protection during construction and beyond. And lastly, we'd like to thank Nick Hendricks from the Planning Department, who has worked so diligently on this project and has really incorporated all of these things that I've mentioned before. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And there's been some additions to queue conditions submitted by the council office. For the record, should we read these in the record?
I think that would be a wise idea, at least to summarize the major points of these changes. Maybe you could call staff up to do that.
Sure. Staff on the project?
Or the council office.
Brad? Now, have you reviewed these? The city attorney's office reviewed these, and are these? Sometimes when we get there's may or may not be nexus with the actual project that's being.
Yes, I worked with the staff on these.
Okay.
So they're acceptable.
Good afternoon, committee members. This is Nick Hendricks, City Planning. We've looked at the additional queue conditions, and we accept these conditions. We believe that they're reasonable. There is an nexus for them to be included into the conditions of approval. They are supported by the community as well, and we feel that with the application of these, they'll add further to mitigating environmental impacts and improving quality in the neighborhood.
Can you summarize these? I don't know if you need to read all of them, but can you just go quickly through them?
Well, item 1, which is to allow the permittee to shall present the final plans to the applicable council office and Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council Land Use Committee for consultation for consistency with this condition. Condition number 2 that's listed here, the permittee shall provide liaison, work with Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council to identify priority parkland acquisition improvement, and this is relative to project's Quimby fees being paid into the local community. We agree with that. We believe that there is a nexus with the project being located near parks that could use additional improvements. Condition number 3, which is relative to neighborhood committee, which is an advisory committee. We agree with the components of that particular action, and we believe that it's a reasonable effort to review transportation mitigation funds in the area. Condition number 4, which is to revise the last sentence of A, which states that all expenditures from the Neighborhood Transportation Committee funds shall be made upon the consultation with the committee and the approval of written acknowledgement of Department of Planning and LADOT. We agree with that. Neighborhood Transportation Measures Fund, which they're adding an additional $40,000 to be allocated towards permit parking. We believe that's a reasonable accommodation and is relative to the transportation improvements in the area. Lastly, number 5, which includes measures for parking improvements, which are intended to increase parking availability, reduce search times, and relieve traffic congestion. Again, there's a nexus there with the original traffic study. With consideration that there are traffic impacts in the local neighborhood, this will add to further improve those conditions. And I believe that's it.
Great. Thank you very much. My only question on this is one of these speakers, which is something that I was looking at, and I often wonder when we make these changes, is the citywide commission approved this project at what number of units, residential units?
The approval is for 325?
325, and it still stays at 3. No, it's...
yes, I mean, what is allowed
it was approved at 325. It wasn't approved at the original 500.
No, and the permitted density allowed on the site is 549 units.
Okay.
That's allowed by the zone.
Okay, and what was studied in terms of the impacts and traffic analysis? At what number were those studies used?
The original project incorporated the 500 units. It was further revised to 399. The traffic study did reflect those changes. It was then further reduced. Under CEQA, you're not required to do a traffic study for every single reduction that occurs when a project's reduced. The only time that you're required to revisit those analyses is if you add a new component to the project where a new impact has been identified that wasn't previously analyzed. In this particular case, all the environmental impacts were analyzed, and the project changes are still within the umbrella of the original scope of the project. They're just at a reduced amount.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Mr. Englander?
Great, thank you very much. I've got just a comment in terms of my concern of it being as close to the freeway with 35 feet. That's certainly a concern, particularly as we've seen study after study, not just the recent studies that were cited from UCLA and USC, but for years in studies. And so I wanted to just ask some questions on the conditions and what's being done. I've noticed some of the things, but before I dive into that, if I could, on the updated condition number 4B, which is the permit parking under subsection 3, you had indicated there would be an additional $40,000, but it says here $40,000 shall initially be allocated towards the permit parking. So just for clarity, is that part of the $300,000 allocation that was put towards the mitigation efforts? That is,
yes.
Okay.
That's actually on top of an additional $100,000.
Right, I saw that later. I had a question on that
too. So it's 400
it goes
plus
from 3
the 40.
plus the 4, and then if this is utilizing the first 40 out of that 4.
Correct,
So
yes.
I'll get into that because I wasn't sure. That's only mentioned in one place. Okay. Under number 5, it does say the plan may include measures, but it looks like it will include measures, those mitigating measures. So should that, and I don't mean to wordsmith this, but the conditions are everything. And I've got a lot of friends that I've worked with in all the associations that have come forward as well, some of these same concerns that have brought these to my attention. So I just wanted to ask for some clarity perspective on number 5, just the word may, it probably should be will include measures such as.
Well, we didn't want to be too strict on the application here. We wanted to provide some flexibility because as part of the project currently, there are a number of bike racks that are already required by law, by the ordinance.
Right.
In addition to those bike racks, the numbers include also bike sharing programs and car sharing. So this is just an additional amenity or accommodation on top of what is already required. So we're just allowing flexibility for choices to be made so that when they're in discussions with the community, what they feel their best interests are at hand.
And when you say reduce search times, is that indicating one of the smart technologies of installing the applications in ground? How do you reduce search times for parking? Is that what you're referring to, what we've done in Hollywood, for example, and downtown?
Well, for example, if you improve the parking conditions, then you limit the number of times people have to travel around the block to find a parking space. By reducing the amount of cars that are already parked there, you're allowing more spaces to become available. So on top of the project being parked at advisory agency levels, which the project is really an apartment project, but because they're part of a subdivision, they're actually parked at a higher standard. So 2.25 spaces per unit is more than what is actually required by the law.
So this would be more of a benefit to the mitigation rather than
it just
an
enhances
active,
the
an active
existing
mitigation. Okay.
Yes.
All right. On number 9, which actually then really brings us back to the air levels, and that seemed to be the bulk of, not all the concern, but certainly the bulk of the concern. You talk about an air filtration system, but then you go into mitigation 19 to spell out that mitigation and the ventilation systems and the HVACs that'll be in the residential occupancy units. And it goes through and talks about the specifications for those as well as the maintenance. The only thing it doesn't discuss is the inspections. It talks about the maintenance. Who inspects the actual air units to ensure that the filtration systems are being changed on a regular basis and updated to the manufacturer specifications? Is that a building and safety? Who does inspections on filtration systems?
That's a good question. What happens is that when the project is first built, they're supposed to provide the prescribed devices for mitigating air quality. Those systems are implemented as part of the construction process. They're signed off, building checkers check for their efficiency. On top of this, it's a MERV rating of 16 that they're providing, which is the highest that I've ever seen on any project. But after that, it's up to the owner to maintain the units.
Can we come back with that when this comes to council with some type of added inspection to ensure that they're being maintained? I mean, it's critically important if we're looking at a project so close to air quality issues in the freeway. And it does go on in another condition that mentions the windows closest to those freeway systems would not be operative unless necessary or where needed, but it doesn't specify if in fact that's going to be done. So I'll do a deeper dive offline on those because I'm curious, but I am interested to see that condition has some type of regular inspection.
Sure.
So if we can come back with that when it comes to council as well. On 36, it says prior to the issuance of permits, the features may include the following elements, and then you've got into designing entryways, elevators, lobbies, parking areas, lighting that eliminates area. This really deals with the public safety elements, LAPD's crime prevention units regarding on-site crime. Historically and traditionally, these are pretty minor, eliminating areas of dead space, providing solid corridors with deadbolt locks. It says may. I would strongly suggest we go back to what's historically in these is shall, because these ones, again, these are minor financial elements, but major crime reduction elements that should be included in the project. So I would just suggest that word be shall. In the conditions from 50 to 56, it talks about all the street the local streets and the impacts. It talks about the mitigations. This has to do with Camarillo to Sepulveda, Ventura, and the on and off ramp, Ventura and Van Nuys Boulevard restriping, the turn lanes. There's no timeline on any of these, on when they would be done or what triggers them, at what point?
Well, they're subject to DOT's determination because they monitor the activities as they're being implemented. In addition, with the $300,000 fees that they're paying into, DOT then determines as they're applying the mitigation measures what additional improvements may be necessary, and those are described in condition number 57. Generally, most of the conditions are triggered by a certificate of occupancy. So there is a time frame for these things to be implemented, but it's still subject to DOT's review and approval.
Okay, and so, and this is a little unique in the fact that you've got all these different entities working on this committee that has a pot of funds of what appears to be about $400,000, or we've already spent roughly $40,000 for the temporary parking. So $360,000 that are left, where they have to agree on what mitigations would be done. Is this the pool of? No.
That is a separate activity, and the fees that are going to that particular committee is $100,000. The $300,000 is dedicated to DOT.
That's $100,000 for that committee.
This is an additional enhanced mechanism that's on top of what's already required. And so there may be some minor things in the local neighborhood that may need improvements, and so these funds and this committee is there so that they can have this discussion with the Department of Planning as well as Department of Transportation. But it has no effect on the conditions that are memorialized right now in the Q conditions. These are mitigation measures that are required by law and cannot be changed or modified.
So these conditions so I understand then, the 50 through 56, that $300,000 is part of this? No.
The $300,000 is part of the mitigation package that DOT is requiring as a result of the environmental impact analysis.
So if anything's triggered from these elements, 50 to 56, that'll be over and above.
Right.
Okay. So that doesn't have a cap. If it has to be done, it's got to be done.
Right. Correct.
Okay. I think that's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any motion on this item, or should I make a motion? Colleagues, after hearing testimony and reviewing this, including the local council office, I'll move to approve the CPC report, including the zone change and track map, and deny appeals, including C52A appeal, and incorporate the amendments made by Mr. Englander at this time as well. So is there a second on that? Second by Mr. Englander. Any objection? Is he here? Is Mr. Siddi? Okay. So
in addition, Councilman, to the conditions read by CD4.
And the conditions granted by CD4, yes. Okay. So with that, let the record reflect Mr. Englander and Mr. Weezer are moving that item forward to council with those changes and amendments. Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Next two items, Councilman, are interrelated. They relate to a project in CD1 for the Highland Park Transit Village, a new joint public-private development with 3 residential housing sites. Item 6 contains the land use entitlements. Item 7 contains the track map appeal and environmental.
Okay. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Christina Lee, Department of City Planning staff. The case that we have before you is the Highland Park Transit Village. It's a joint public and private development. The site is located in the Northeast LA plan, and it is located directly south of the Metro Gold Line station and also located directly north of the Figueroa Street, which is a commercial corridor. The site includes 3 sites, but it is one development, and the sites are referenced as sites 1, 2, and 3. They are currently improved with public surface parking lots, and they are owned by the Department of Transportation. The applicant is proposing to construct 20 condominium units on Site 1, 50 apartment units on Site 2. 49 will be affordable units, and on Site 3, the applicant is proposing 10 apartment affordable units. The site will also maintain the existing surface public park, will also maintain public parking, and will also maintain the 221 parking spaces. Let's see, the project will be built in 2 phases. Phase 1 will include sites 2 and 3, and phase 1 will include site 1. There are 3 points, main points for the appeals. The first point is historic. The second point is to maintain the project site as service parking lots. And the third point is that the project should require an EIR. Regarding those 3 points, the project did get approval from the Highland Park Ravanza HBOZ board, and the conditions have been included in this determination. Regarding Site 2, to maintain the public surface parking, the project will maintain all the 221 parking spaces on the 3 sites. And regarding point 3, for an EIR is only required if they are impacts that cannot be mitigated. This project did get mitigated negative declarations since there were impacts, and mitigations were incorporated to minimize the impacts to a less than significant level. The City Planning Commission approved the project as proposed, with the addition of 1 condition that included Phase 2 environmental site assessment for sites 1 and 2. Staff is recommending that you deny the appeals and sustain the decisions of the City Planning Commission.
Great. Thank you very much. And we have a number of comments here. I don't know, Mr. Cedillo, it's in your district. You want to reserve your comments after public comment or now? After? Okay. We have the appellant, Lisa Dewardo. 3 minutes, please.
The appellants are actually a loosely formed group called Friends of Highland Park, and I was hoping to also do 3 minutes with Lloyd Catrow.
Okay.
I mean, we're actually a team of 3 hardworking community members that are pushing this forward.
Who is the other person? Did they submit a card?
Jesse Rosas and Lloyd Catrow.
And who is the appellant on this?
If we could have 3 minutes.
Okay.
The appellant
of record
is Lisa Dewardo, Councilman.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll give one other person from that group an opportunity to speak, and so 3 minutes each, and we'll be flexible. And you want Jesse Rosas as the other person?
I'll let them figure it out if that's okay with you. They're behind me now, so.
Okay.
But those would be the 2 other gentlemen that are, we're a force of 3 here, with many behind us.
Okay.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Dewardo. I'm a resident of Highland Park since 1965, and I'm speaking on behalf of Friends of Highland Park. Sorry, that was squeaky. This is from the California Governor's Office of Planning and Research. What is a negative declaration? When faced with a discretionary project which is not exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, a lead agency must prepare an initial study to determine whether the project may have significant adverse effects on the environment. If such an effect may occur, the lead agency must prepare an environmental report. This community has voiced its substantial concerns since 2008. My letter, one of many on the record to McCormick, Barron Salazar, and CD1 at the time of 2008, raises the issue of lack of community involvement, housing and population density, traffic congestion, and the elimination of vistas or view sheds, which characterize Highland Park, evidenced in the many historic writings on this area from the likes of Charles Lummis, founders of Occidental College, founder of Judson Studio, the great modern poet Robinson Jeffers, President Taft William. I also voiced concern over the impact or potential impact of a heat island effect by intense increase of large hardscape development, raising temperatures and reducing airflows. It is now 2013, and this community continues to voice substantial concern, and that is why we are here today with this appeal. We have included many more concerns of significant or potentially significant impacts to air quality, toxic gases from intense construction to operation of this proposed development. California Air Resource Board identifies diesel engine exhaust as toxic and carcinogenic. The trucks as one of the largest sources of this toxic gas. Schools are a sensitive receptor of concern, not included in the initial study or the MND on this project. Water quality, the development is less than a half-mile downhill to the Arroyo Seco, a major tributary to the Los Angeles River and watershed. Not included in the initial study, no appropriate analysis on water hydrology. Highland Park is home to several artisan springs: White Rose Springs, Indian Head Water, Yosemite Water, Sparklets Water. Not included in the initial study or MND. The lead agency, in its own recommendations of June 13, 2013, recommended Article number 11, a fish and game fee is now required to be submitted. I'm just going to jump through this and not go in detail. I'm going to leave it with you. Historical resources, the Act of Route 66 corridor, open space, where Highland Park is 1.4 acres per 1,000 people, and the National Rec Parks is 6 to 10 acres per 1,000 people. I won't address housing and population, but the MND did not even check the box, even though this is a housing development. Fair argument. The original determination made on the basis of initial study whether to prepare either a negative declaration or an EIR is subject to the fair argument test. In other words, if a fair argument can be raised on the basis of substantial evidence, the record that the project may have significant adverse environmental impact, even if evidence also exists to the contrary, then an EIR is required. This is what the community demands yesterday and today. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I will leave this. Sorry if I shouted into the microphone. I will leave this, which is my full statement that I didn't get to finish.
You could give that to the clerk, please. And we are trying to identify the other appellant that you would like to speak on behalf of the group. What is the name? Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As Lisa spoke, the MND has missed a few points. The proposed excavation of the parking lots and dust control by wetting, a mitigation measure, will allow the contaminants from the over 100 years of automotive use to flow into the aquifer below the sites. The numerous springs in the vicinity Lisa mentioned provide a constant flow of groundwater through the sites. The approximate average level of that groundwater is 16 to 18 feet below the surface at the sites. The most notable source of groundwater, of course, is the Sparklets bottling plant uphill from the site. All of the springs that are a result of fracturing of the bedrock below Highland Park. The Raymond Fault being the largest and cited in the Alquist-Priolo Act. The York Boulevard Fault crosses York Boulevard at Avenue 57. Downhill slightly, you have the Elysian Park and Griffith Park Fault that cross Monte Vista Avenue between Avenues 58 and 59. Further south, downgrade, is the Hollywood Fault that crosses Marmion Way at Avenue 54. To the west at Avenue 51 is the Highland Park Fault. These faults are considered active by the state of California. These faults also provide Highland Park with a unique geological feature that are part of the beginnings of the Pueblo de Los Angeles. The map is attached to the documents I provided to you. If you wish to see a larger map, I have one with me. In closing, I have been in contact with the state geologist doing the Hollywood Fault survey. He indicated that he concurs with the general consensus of Kate Hutton and Lucille Jones that all of these faults do converge at the Raymond Fault. Therefore, by consensus, it is given that at least one, possibly two faults travel directly underneath these sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Jesse Rosas.
Good afternoon, council members. The reason we paused to this project because it really did not create lots of jobs in our community, because as a small business, many of the people hire people from the community. As it is, the infrastructure of the area, it doesn't take more density. We have almost 74,000 people reside in Highland Park by itself. So this is not going to be able to take more. Even the sewer is not going to be able to take any more. You know, the sewer, the infrastructure is very old, built in 1800s. I don't think so. There's going to take more, because once again, if they want people flash all at once, the toilet, that's going to really affect all the business in the corridor and figure out. So that's going to take jobs. In the 18 months of construction, they're going to take jobs. And the parking lot is essential for businesses. If we eliminate the parking lot, like any other city, they don't have parking, they don't have no businesses. So in reality, if that parking belonged to the businesses, even though there was a bond in 1984 paid by the property owners in that time, in 1962 there was a suit against the city for the parking lots, and there was a decree on court. And those parking lots are supposed to be used in a specific for parking lot for the business's benefit. And if that project goes in, they're going to ruin the whole corridor. As it is, I worked in 1995 for the LANI program to develop the corridor, and the past councilman didn't follow the instructions of the plan, and he didn't even finish the plan, and it's still pending. A lot of the sidewalks, they're broken, the trees, they had not changed it, the lighting came up, yeah, but they're missing a lot of parts. The facade improvement is not there for the businesses, and not even to facilitate more ability to create more business in the corridor. So the reason we're fighting this is because the infrastructure of the area is not taken to any more buildings in the area, as big as this. And second, they're going to kill a lot of small business in the corridor. And that's why we oppose strongly to that. I know this fell into the new council member, Gilsey de Jong de la, but I think so he will take the bull by the horns and really take it on it, because that is not right for the community. It's going to affect a lot of people who live in the area. We're going to eat there for 18 months. We're going to breathe there for 18 months. So we're going to lose all the parkings. And as it is, it's density in the area. We're not going to find no parking. When the take is going to give us the 221 parking, that's a lie. Because in reality, when they take over the building, then it's going to be control of the parking. I don't think so. Many of the property owners, they're going to be able to pay the fee, monthly fee, to the plan to do so. If there's going to be public parking, it has to be open 24/7 with the guards, and it has to be provide all the facilities they need to succeed all the business. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll go over to the applicants, Daniel Falcon, Michael Woodward, and Andy Adame. And you also provide 3 minutes each, please.
Councilman, thank you very much. Pleasure to be here. Recap, I'll be brief. The development consists of 80 units total to be developed in conjunction with public parking lots that the city owns. The city parking spaces will all be rebuilt and redone completely. At the end of development, the 80 units will consist of 60 affordable rental units and 20 for-sale condominium units. The parking, to clarify, will always be owned by the City of Los Angeles even after it's rebuilt. The parking current rates will be set, and the future rates will be set by the Department of Transportation. We have spoken with them, and they've committed to maintaining the existing 2-hour free parking that is available, along with paid parking for longer periods than 2 hours. We'll also provide the appropriate signage. In terms of the number of spaces, they'll all be returned, and we're also building parking per code for the residential development, so no existing parking spaces will be used. Parking is free to the residents, just to clarify one of the points that I believe a speaker made, that people will not be able to afford parking. The parking is free to the tenants assigned to their spaces, as well as the homeowners assigned to their spaces. In addition to items raised here, there were letters of communication to the city, and we've answered those in formal letters for the file, and asked that those be recognized. I won't go through a litany of those various details. Touching on a few of the items in those letters, concern about the bid. The city currently pays fees into the bid consistent with the bid regulations. Those will continue to be paid after development, and in addition, the apartment development will also pay into the bid as is considered a mixed-use building. In terms of open space, we currently meet the open space requirements per zoning code requirements. In addition, we're planting more trees than are required by code, and we also agreed to pay the Quimby funds, even though affordable housing could be exempt under the city regulations. We've recognized the need for investment in public space in the area and agreed to pay those fees. So we feel that we've met the obligations on open space. Notwithstanding that, we recognize also as good corporate citizens, it's good to have investment in public space, open space, and so we agreed to work with the city in identifying additional open space opportunities within a half mile of the site, along with potentially other parks in the area, the Highland Park Recreation Center, the Sycamore Grove Park, so we can find ways to enhance those open spaces. Again, so I think stormwater has been raised as an issue. The sites currently are 100% surface parked asphalt parking, and all the water is run off onto the streets and into storm drains. We'll capture all that water per the city regulations. So with that, recognizing the time, I'll close and be available for any questions, and we ask you to move forward and deny the appeals. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael Woodward.
Good afternoon. Just briefly, I submitted a letter on behalf of the applicant responding to the points raised in the appeal, and I believe you have that in your packet. We also submitted today a letter which included a parking study that looked at the available public parking in the area, and found that it was underutilized currently. So you have that analysis also. And prior, as the appellant mentioned, she said that they had raised some environmental concerns in the past and felt that they weren't listened to. Our environmental consultant submitted a letter back in April before the Planning Commission heard this, before the advisory agency heard it, and responded to all the environmental issues there. With that, I'll close. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Dame? Okay, thank you. So now we'll go to the individuals who have indicated opposition to the project. Again, we have 1 minute for each speaker. Douglas Jacobs, Heinrich Kiefer.
Hi. I grew up with a front row seat on the California efforts in urban development. My father was a self-described Oakland playground bum. After graduating from UC Berkeley on the GI Bill, he wrote a friend of the court brief for Pat Brown, who was Attorney General, on the constitutionality of redevelopment law. When Brown became governor, my father went to work as the general counsel for the redevelopment agency here in Los Angeles, working closely with Tom Bradley and the city council. He helped set up the Urban Development Action Grant Program for the Carter administration. He then retired, taught the principles of state-local partnership and private-public partnership at BYU. From him, I learned that due process strengthens every project, and that cutting short the public process and derailing environmental studies leads to endless legal tangles. And in this, if it lands in the court, this will be more expensive for everyone. There's been a curious lack of will, perhaps an unconscious bias against Highland Park, and there's not been an environmental impact report done on Transit Village. You know, I developed San Diego Repertory Theater from an $18,000 budget to a $2 million budget in 10 years. I worked on the Design Advisory Committee for the Center City Development Corporation when they were setting up the Lyceum in San Diego at Horton Plaza. The one thing that I saw in this neighborhood was that these blocks that are being gathered together to create the Transit Village, if the city is going to use its powers to put together these plots of land, I would think something more imaginative at the center of that business district could be used. I am working with some people to start a theater in that neighborhood. There is no theater in that whole watershed district. And that area is prime and perfect for that. I was in San Diego for 20 years watching it grow.
Thank you, sir. Your minute is up. Yeah, thank you.
Well, I will wrap it up. There has been, in terms of the previous hearing, there was, public testimony was cut from 2 minutes to 1 minute because there were so many people there. One person got up, said there were no views in that area to destroy. I've taken 7 photographs of that neighborhood from the Gold Line station that show the views.
Thank you. Heinrich, Kiefer, Carlos Lopez.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Heinrich Kiefer. I'm a 35-year resident of Highland Park, a former 30-year plumbing contractor, former president of the Highland Park Neighborhood Council and the Chamber of Commerce. While I support the revitalization and development in Highland Park, I cannot accept the current plan primarily due to the lack of sufficient parking for the short and long term. I therefore strongly support the appeal and hope we can get some more parking. So we're thinking more futuristic. Thank you.
Thank you. Carlos Lopez and Porter.
Like the gentleman before me, I do support the project to a certain extent, you know, as long as it abides by the rules and the laws speculated by Los Angeles City. And, of course, the more important problem is the parking. I myself in my household, I have 4 different vehicles, and how many of the tenants that are going to live in this place are actually going to abide by that, how many vehicles are they going to have? And where is that spillover going to go? Is it going to go into the space allotted for the businesses, which more than likely the answer is going to be yes. So definitely our business is going to be impacted by the project. So I ask you to please make sure that you look out for the best interest of the neighborhood and the businesses. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We're taking no more cards on commenters. We keep getting them, so we are closing the commenter cards. So, Ann Porter, Elsa Morales.
My name is, okay, am I on now? Okay, my name is Ann Porter. There should be an environmental impact report for a project of this size in our neighborhood. This will be the biggest construction outside of Luther Burbank Junior High and Franklin High. The MND does not address the environmental impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Elsa Morales, Denise Ovaltsen.
Hi, my name is Elsa Morales. I'm here to say that I'm totally against this project. I've been living in Highland Park for 21 years, and they're planning to do the 10-unit right in front of my house. There's a parking lot which they're saying that there's never cars there. They're always packed. So I'm asking myself where these cars are going to park when they start building. We don't have enough parking lot right now. Imagine when they start building where these people is going to park. There's too many things that they're saying very nice things, but honestly, they're going to keep the word that all they're saying right now. I'm totally against this project. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Denise Ovaltsen, Richard Marquez.
My name is Denise Ovaltsen. And with this project, it is destructive to historical Route 66 corridor. The structures and the scenery along Route 66 are listed on the National Park Survey's Register of Historic Places and are protected by federal law, Public Law 10645, by building 3.5-story buildings that will obstruct hillside views, dwarf nearby single-family homes, and tower over buildings along Figueroa Street. The project displays insensitivity to the unique character and the cultural heritage of Highland Park. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard Marquez, Dr. Stanley Moore.
Good afternoon, committee members and councilmen. My name is Richard Marquez. I'm a longtime resident of Highland Park. I oppose this project in all. I believe that to have a transit village or transit development, we have to have a transit system. And Los Angeles at this point doesn't have a transit system compared to other cities around the world, let alone the United States. Our transit system, I enjoyed the fact that a gentleman brought a plan ahead of you and said that if you look at the plan some 40 years ago, you can't tell what's going to happen the next 40 years. If we were going to develop a good transit system, we would put in 4 rails on that gold line, to have an express rail, to have the local rails, just like they have in New York or they have in San Francisco or Chicago, wherever you want to go. We do not have on paper a transit system that's going to help our community, let alone Los Angeles, fight the traffic that we're fighting right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Stanley Moore, Angie Marie.
Dr. Stan Moore, resident of Highland Park for 22 years. I'm opposed to this project after many years of been on the Highland Park Neighborhood Council. We voted against it 3 times. Once I was the only person who abstained because I wanted more information about it, but over time I came to oppose it because of its impact primarily on parking and on the businesses. Right now, having walked within the last 2 weeks the entire length of Avenue 51 to Avenue 60 on Figueroa, we have at least 12 businesses shut down in that stretch. If we try over 18 months to dig a big, huge hole in 2 places and eliminate all this parking, more businesses will die, more jobs will be lost, and so forth. I'm here in hopes that you will be wrong on my wife. My wife said, "Why are you wasting your time?" They're not going to listen. All they're interested in are the shekels. She said, and she's a Presbyterian pastor with 4 languages in her church, and she's 75 and they won't let her retire. She's very smart. I married up. She said, they just are Judases all over again looking for their 30 pieces of silver. I hope that you're not that, and I hope that you won't be swayed by these people. On trash day and on, which is today, and on cleaning days, street cleaning days, you can find out how badly the parking is. People park in the driveways, in the alleyways. I have 3 parking spaces behind my house. Often there's strange cars there, parked there, because they have no other place to park. We have a major problem of jobs, businesses, and so forth, and this is just going to kill them.
Thank you. Angie Marie, Juanita Karosky.
Hi, my name is Angie Marie. I've been a resident of Highland Park since 1986, and I oppose this project. The parking is a very big concern of everyone. If you had been at the meetings, any of the meetings, neighborhood meetings at the senior center or at the church, we have concerns that haven't been addressed. They'll tell you they have responded to our concerns, but they haven't addressed them adequately. And even, Mr. Cedillo, when you were running for this seat, your people used that parking lot and those parking lots to work on your behalf. We need that parking. Also, they say they're going to create jobs, which there are already jobs created by those parking lots. The film industry is the biggest industry we have in LA, and they have used those parking lots even recently to film Gangster Squad, True Blood, Cagney and Lacey, The Practice, The Closer, Reservoir Dogs, NCIS, Los Angeles, Criminal Minds, Rizzoli and Isles. Robert Downey Jr. filmed a movie there. George C. Scott, if anybody remembers him. John Ritter, before he passed, his son filmed there. Lincoln, parts of Lincoln, the movie, those parking lots were used for that. Leverage, Bones, commercials, Sons of Anarchy, a McDonald's commercial, a Coke commercial, The
If you could
Mentalist.
wrap it up, please. Yeah.
Yes, I'm just saying you're taking away jobs. They're saying they're creating a job, but an apartment manager is one person. And all of these people, if you watch these movies or these television shows, there's a long list of people that had jobs at one point because those parking lots were there.
Thank you.
So please vote against this project. Thank you.
Juanita Karosky, Oscar Dewardo.
Hello, my name is Anita Karosky. I live in Highland Park since 1986, and I own a home there. I'm half a block from where this part of this project is going to go in. Our sidewalks are beat up. You can hardly walk across the sidewalk because of the trees that nobody's been taking care of. Excuse me. Another concern I have is the impact it's going to have on the school system. We have a school 1 block away. We have an elementary school that's right next door. We have the high school right there. All of those schools require teachers, they require all the teachers who work there, all the students who live in that area require certain things. They can get those things on Highland Park Avenue, Figueroa Avenue, if they can get there. There are some businesses still there. They can be saved. Teachers need pencils, schools need pencils, students need pencils. We can find those on Figueroa Avenue. We can't find them if we don't have a place to shop. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the power grid that we have. We get power outages every year. We get sewer problems every year. Our infrastructure in that area is very old. We don't need any more huge buildings going up that require more teachers coming in. More students coming in and impacting the school district. We don't need more infrastructure that puts a burden on our power grid and on our the entire infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry. Flustered.
Thank you. Oscar Eduardo, Chana Grace.
Good afternoon. I'm a 47-year resident of Highland Park, a couple blocks from where the development is planned. Recently, the head of the city government, our new mayor, Garcetti, spoke on the radio regarding the input of community folks in decision-making process in their communities. And what he said was that they are the experts. Listen to them. And 2 minutes or 1 minute or whatever time I'm going to get before I get cut off here is really insufficient compared to the amount of time that I can only imagine that the developers had working with all the different agencies of the city of Los Angeles to get this development pushed through. So I want a real chance, and I think the people who've already stepped up and talked, and many more of them that don't have the opportunity to attend for lack of ability to take a day off of work or something, have a real chance to have a real opportunity to be heard by not only our councilmen, but all the other different departments that are involved in making this happen. So, I would also like to invite our new councilman. I'm sorry, I have a diabetic problem, so I have a problem with memory. But our new councilman to come to the community garden and speak with some of the residents regarding this thing. It would be a very neutral place where I think a very civil and organic conversation could take place. Thank you.
Chana Grace, Don Garza.
My name is Chana Grace, and I am in support of this project. I am the president of a local Highland Park nonprofit organization and a 42-year resident of the area. We own 2 affordable housing developments in the neighborhood, one on Avenue 60 serving seniors and one on Avenue 50 for families, and we have very long waiting lists at both developments. We initially had some reservations about the development proposed by McCormick Barron Salazar, but to their credit, they actively solicited input from a number of community stakeholders. The result, a reduction in the number of units and one-to-one replacement parking, public parking, for parking lots that have gone underutilized for decades. We believe that this transit-oriented development meets the needs of many in the local community. Quality, affordable housing right next to transit. For people who live there, we feel that a resounding yes in favor of the findings and conditions is what is needed. This project is the only appropriate, supporting this project is the only appropriate action to take at this time and the development by McCormick Barron Salazar is the right project at the right place, within walking distance of transit, walking distance of services and businesses, and we hope you will opine in that way. Gigi Sabo could not stay. She was here earlier, and she too is a Highland Park resident and hopes you will approve this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Don Garza and Walnum.
I had the opportunity to visit that area for about 5.5 months. Not really, but the second part. About maybe how long was it? About a month and a half. I'm opposed. I would like to see some mitigations. The people are saying they want mitigations. They want to be heard again. I think that they should be heard again if that's what they want. Parking is hard to come by. Affordable housing is hard to come by. But I think this needs to be rehashed all over again if the people are saying this is what they want. They want to be heard. They want mitigations. They want to know that everything's going to be safe. They're going to have parking. The businesses aren't going to be so affected because, once again, if you don't have jobs, people lose jobs during the construction phase, then those people may not be able to pay their rent. So now you have even more people in the interim while you're creating the housing that are now homeless. So let the people be heard.
Thank you. Ann Walnum, Jan Goodman. Yeah, we typically don't do that because otherwise we'd have people coming here saying that all the time that, that's a rule we use. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Jan Goodman.
Jan Goodman. Good afternoon. I am here to represent a number of property owners in Highland Park as well as myself. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I have been a property owner and stakeholder in Highland Park for almost 30 years. I'm here to address the assumption that this whole project is going forward on. It's as if the city all of a sudden discovered they had this lovely strip of land to build housing on. The problem with that is that this land was condemned for one reason and one reason only, and that was parking. In 1962, in the case of the Superior Court versus Bates, case number 749-760, April 13th, 1962, the court stated, quote, that the condemnation was for, quote, the use of the public for public off-street parking purposes, unquote. It did not say public off-street parking purposes and housing and stores or anything else. It was very clear it was for public parking. Other people have addressed and will address the issue of the need for this parking, but I will address how that parking came to be. That parking came to be because the landowners there who own that land was condemned for public parking. The commercial property owners then were assessed a bond for paying for that property, and they continue to be assessed for that property, for the property district. In addition, when the parking lots were created, each landowner was given a certain number of parking spaces, and those parking spaces were gave them whatever they needed for the code and supposedly to also satisfy their needs. When this project goes up, perhaps they will have the right to ask that property be revert to them because it's not being used for the purpose that it was initially condemned for, and that is public parking only.
We'll wrap it up, please. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Now for support, Franklin Granados and Juan Lozcano.
Good afternoon. My name is Franklin Granados. I'm in support for the Highland Park Vista Village project that is being proposed by McCormick Barron. I'm actually a resident in another complex that is owned and managed by them. It's called Pueblo del Sol. I've been living there for approximately 10 years. This facility, prior to this, I was living in South Central on 84th Street between the streets of Vermont and Hoover. This was a place where I was scared to even take a step out of the door due to my parents even trembled to even go to the corner store to get a gallon of milk for my little sister and I. Prior to this, I was also living in a garage that was had walls for curtains and an outhouse for a restroom. This facility, I moved into this facility about where I believe that a child is at a very pivotal point in their life. I was approximately 9 years old. And I had one dream. I remember moving into this project was being able to walk to school since I wasn't able to do that before. This facility being guarded 24/7 brought to my family and I security. Also stability. Moved approximately 4 times before I came to this place. 4 elementary schools within 3 years. I was able to call it a home, leading me to become a very strong community activist, leading to helping out small businesses that have grown throughout this community, progressive programs that have been established for the kids. And also, I leave with this, are really the sites. One second.
You can wrap it up, please. Thank you.
Well, the views of the people are views that are brought forth from these people, and also the our views more important than the well-being of other families.
Thank you.
Low-income families. Thank you.
Juan Lozcano, Carlos Martinez.
Good afternoon. My name is Juan Lozcano. I am and have been a resident of Highland Park for the past 13 years. I'm here on behalf of my mother. She couldn't make it. She works at a daycare, so she sees families going in and out, so she goes through a lot of. And I strongly support this transit because I believe there's a lot of people that actually need housing, and with rent being up so high, they're not able to afford it. My mother's seeing families that are working 2-3 jobs, can't even spend time with their kids just to be able to afford rent. So if this Highland Park project comes, maybe some more people could come move in, and maybe I heard an argument about schools. Maybe save up some more money to send their kids to maybe private schools or something better for them. Just because they make low income doesn't mean they shouldn't be able to get the opportunity of others. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Carlos Martinez, Tina Miller.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Carlos Martínez. Voy a hablar en español. Bueno, yo soy pastor de la iglesia.
Un momento, por favor. Si hay alguien aquí para traducir, no. Sir, we don't have a translator. Gil Cedillo will translate for us. I'll translate. Ricardo back here. This guy, I know I've heard him speak Spanish before. He speaks better Spanish than I do. So, un momento. Vamos a que traduzca lo que va a decir.
Bueno, mi nombre es Carlos Martínez, soy pastor de la iglesia evangélica en el área de Cypress.
He's the pastor in the church in the Cypress area.
Está contiguo a Highland Park. Y tenemos nosotros una bonita comunidad de Highland Park ahí en nuestra congregación.
They have many congregants from Highland Park at their church, and it's a beautiful community.
Como unas 6-7 familias. Y estamos muy contentos y felices de saber que que ellos están ahora con la posibilidad de poder tener un proyecto habitacional como el que se está queriendo hacer en esa comunidad.
There's about 6 or 7 families, and that they're actually very happy that there's a housing opportunity for them in Highland Park.
Tengo la oportunidad de conocer cómo los proyectos que ha hecho esta compañía, Baron McCormick. Ellos han hecho varios proyectos y la comunidad está muy contenta. Así que los miembros de nuestra iglesia también están contentos de saber que tienen ahora la oportunidad de vivir en un proyecto tan bonito como este.
They become familiar with other projects from the developer, and that they're very excited about having that opportunity for their congregants to have access to that kind of housing.
Que le da de poder tener a sus hijos a las familias estar más estables, más seguras, porque son proyectos que garantizan o tienen bastante cuidado de que su comunidad tenga toda la protección y eso es algo muy bonito para nuestra gente.
They're excited about housing that will allow the families to grow with the youth that are there now, with the security measures that will be supportive of the family environment that they seek.
Así que pues nos sentimos muy contentos y esperamos que este proyecto se pueda realizar para beneficiar a toda nuestra comunidad, sobre todo nuestra iglesia, y a todos aquellos que están esperando este proyecto tan bueno para toda nuestra gente. Aparte que es bastante cómodo para su gente, en cuanto a sus posibilidades económicas.
Thanks you for the opportunity to speak, and he looks forward for this project that will be beneficial to the people in that area.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Gracias. Tina Miller. And after Tina Miller is Harvey Slater. How did you know?
Good afternoon. It's been a long afternoon waiting to speak. So, Transit Village, it's been a long time coming. I've been to the meetings over the last few years, and I was originally against this project, and because I was concerned about the historic preservation overlay zone and the qualities and the quality of living that people expect with pushing forward for an overlay zone. But I think that this project has been mitigated, where it was started out as 101 units, now it's 80. And I agree with the fact that along a transit line, we should provide housing and encourage people to get out of their cars, ride the train, take public transit. So I've come kind of full circle. I do support the project. I do support the idea of providing housing, and I just want them to follow CEQA and EIR. Thank you.
Thank you. Harvey Slater. After Harvey is Gigi Zabo.
Good afternoon. My name is Harvey Slater. I'm a homeowner in Highland Park. I'm a longtime resident of Los Angeles. I'm also director of large on the Historic Highland Park Neighborhood Council. I'm also currently the chairperson of the Land Use Committee. I'm fairly new to this conversation, but as a land use chair, I decided to approach it with an open mind. I think overall this is a great project for the neighborhood, and I do support the project. I think the housing element is critical in our neighborhood. Anyone who lives in Highland Park probably has a slumlord neighbor. People who reside in other cities and abuse land use in our neighborhood and rent out units, illegal units to people. And without a project like this, those people don't have any other place to go. And I think the fact that the developer is above board and trying to work with the community is exemplary. And I think that that's important to provide these people with a housing alternative and to do business with somebody who deserves it and not some slumlord. So I think that, and I think there's probably hundreds of properties in Highland Park that are like this. Beyond that, I just wanted to say that the neighborhood council, I know that there's been tons of engagement with the community over the years. We most recently, my committee actually put together a response to the MND, and we did have a list of environmental impacts that the community is very concerned about, mostly related to the density of the project and whether or not it conforms with the heritage of the neighborhood and the architecture. And I just wanted to urge you all to make sure that that's being looked at, and I have a copy of the letter from the Neighborhood Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Gigi Zabo?
She supports the project.
Great. Thank you. Monica Alcaraz. After Monica is Alex Delgadillo.
Hi, my name is Monica Alcaraz. I'm the current president of the Highland Park Neighborhood Council and also, most importantly, the president of the PTA of Aldama Elementary School. In general, I support the project. I believe that the scale, the size, the characteristics, and aesthetics of the elevation and plans presented by McCormick, Barron, and Salazar, the developers of the transit village, represent a fair compromise after much community input over the past several years. The 40% affordable housing set aside is a benefit to the community and the protection of displacement of existing low-income families, the residents of our neighborhood. I believe that it should be this committee's charge to ensure robust, responsive, affordable housing units set aside and included in all new and repurposed developments agreements citywide. Although I support the project, there are real concerns communicated to myself and other HHPC board members. And again, I'll just go back to the community impact statement that, the statement that was presented by the Neighborhood Council, just to look at that. And then I also have a letter from the vice president of the Neighborhood Council, the first vice, that he supports also the development.
Great. Thank you. Alex Delgadillo. Beth Deckler.
Good afternoon. I'm here as a resident of Highland Park. I've lived in Highland Park all my life, and I've also had the opportunity to work as a program aide in many of the local schools. I'm the only one here. Standing, but the statement is a reflection of many conversations I've had with friends and family in the community. This project is a community development opportunity, economically and culturally. Economically, more neighbors simply means more business and new business. Culturally, the growth that this project will bring will add to the diversity of Highland Park, and anybody that's passed through Highland Park knows that this is the best attribute of the community. This project will also provide quality, affordable housing from an experienced housing development organization that has successfully accomplished similar projects throughout the country. Ultimately, this project will help contribute to the revitalization of Highland Park, which I've experienced for the past 2 decades. And Highland Park has come a long way since my family first moved here over 25 years ago. I look forward to seeing its continued growth and becoming an even greater thriving community. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth Steckler, Ricardo Mireles.
Hi, I'm Beth Steckler. I am a resident of Highland Park for 16 years, and I'm a homeowner. And I'm here in support of the project. We desperately need high-quality housing with affordable rents in Highland Park. Gentrification and displacement is a real problem. This is an excellent use of the parking lots, which are indeed underutilized. I use the Gold Line every day to come to work. I see the parking lots in the morning. I see the parking lots at night. I see the parking lots on the weekends. You know, they're not utilized. But if parking is a problem, I have a suggestion, and that is Piedmont is really wide. And we have diagonal parking on Piedmont in front of the Highland Park Recreation Center, which is 2 blocks away. Okay? We could do diagonal parking all along Piedmont, right? And then the people who park in the parking lot right now who use the Gold Line can go park on Piedmont. And there we have it. We have other ways to do parking on our streets. The parking is being replaced. So I urge you, this is a great developer. Some of you know that. You know that. You've got him in your district. Great developer. It's going to be a fabulous project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo Mireles. Sylvia Valenzuela.
Committee Chair and new council member for our district. Thank you for this opportunity. I'm with Academia Avance, Ricardo Mireles. About 10 years ago, University of California did a study on the college opportunity ratio of all the schools in the state, and the local high school there only had about 15% students that were eligible to go to college. There has been a lot of change in Highland Park, and that's going to go way up, especially with the graduates coming from Avance. Where are these kids going to live? We need housing for these future community residents that are coming back to Highland Park, and they're voters. I urge you to consider the housing needs of these future residents. The space needs for cars, it'll get worked out. This previous speaker already had a quick solution. We'll have solutions for the parking. Let's create solutions now for these future residents coming back to Highland Park. This is one of our parents. I think she's on her sheet. Maybe you can...
Silvia Valenzuela? Yes, thank you.
Voy a hablar español.
Sí. Let's give 2 minutes, please.
Mi nombre es Silvia Valenzuela, soy parte del comité de padres de Academia Avance, tengo 3 hijos en el sexto, 10 y 12º grado, más bien.
Ajá. So she is a parent at Avance with 3 students, one in the, who just finished the 6th grade, one going in the 10th grade, and one that just finished the 12th grade.
El del que terminó el 12 grado va a Humboldt State Universidad. Ya va directo para allá. Y hace, si no estoy mal, 3 o 4 años nosotros los padres de Academia Avance estamos dándole seguimiento a este proyecto y estamos muy excited de que este proyecto se lleve a cabo, puesto que nuestros hijos, yo como madre de 3 hijos, necesitamos una vivienda digna y este lugar nos está ofreciendo a un precio accesible para nosotros. Y como el proyecto de nuestra escuela es que nuestros hijos sean líderes de la comunidad, también es justo que tengan una vivienda digna cuando ellos regresen de la universidad.
So the student who just graduated is on his way to Humboldt University, and this is a family that is looking for what kind of opportunities will be available for him or the other students like that. That this is a project that the Avance parents have been following for several years, and that we need to have good housing for our students when they return as the leaders that we expect them to be.
Espero que escuchen nuestra petición y apoyen este proyecto. Muchas gracias por escucharme.
Gracias.
Thank you for the opportunity to be heard, and we hope to seek your approval for this project.
Thank you. Now we have 2 comments on general comment, and then we'll open it up for discussion amongst the committee. Charles Fisher and Rosario Meyer.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles Fisher, 140 South Avenue 57, a little over a block away from the project. But I'm speaking today as the chair of the Highland Park Historic Preservation Overlay Zone. The Highland Park Board approved this project based on the aesthetics of the project only. We had a number of conditions that we put forth, most of which were involving the actual design of the building and materials to be used. But there were 2 conditions that were added to it after comments from the public at the hearing, and these 2 conditions for some reason did not make the final cut. And I want to bring those 2 up because they are important. One of them is number 10, that the project must comply with all CEQA requirements. And the other condition was that staff and applicant to review any existing access and easements to rear of Figueroa commercial buildings. If easements require any change to plan, applicant will review with board. This was because there was concern at the time that there may be some issues where it may not meet fire life safety requirements, and if there were modifications required, that the HPOZ board wanted to review those modifications. And we're asking that these 2 conditions be put back into the final document. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rosario Meyer.
Buenas tardes. Mi nombre es Rosario Mayen y vivo en MacArthur Park Apartment.
She's a resident of the MacArthur Park Apartments.
Yo vengo a apoyar esto porque son apartamentos muy cómodos, son apartamentos que están hechos para personas de bajos recursos como nosotros. Nos han ayudado mucho.
She's here to support the project because she has seen how these are good housing units for people of low means.
Son apartamentos con todas sus comodidades y aparte nos dan muchos beneficios como nos han dado un pase para el metro.
These housing units have a lot of accommodations and they also have incentives for use of the metro system.
Y también tienen toda su seguridad. Son apartamentos muy lindos, la verdad. Estamos muy cómodos y contentos con estos apartamentos.
In addition, these apartments have good security measures, and then she is here to say that she lives there happily and comfortable.
Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you. And Ricardo, this doesn't mean you could bill the city for your translation services, okay? I just want to get clear. We have a budget deficit. Otherwise, we think about it. Thank you. That concludes our public speakers, and I want to thank everybody for their patience. We've had two projects that had a lot of public testimony and a lot of discussion, so I want to pardon us for how long it's taken us to get here, but we are. This is our last item on the agenda, I believe. Is it? Yeah, it is. Okay.
Yes, Councilman.
Okay. Okay, so Mr. Cedillo, any comments?
DOT, housing, and city planning.
Turn on your mic.
Yeah.
Am I up? Yeah, now you're on. You can repeat that, please?
I would like DOT, housing, and planning to be available. Right here.
Is someone here from housing?
Ernest Aglas, Department of Transportation, Parking Facilities.
And you're from planning, so no one's here from housing, huh? Okay.
So for planning, I'm interested in this question, Mr. Fisher. Is that correct? Raised the question about whether or not when the approval was made on the historic overlay, the question of the environmental impact, was that considered or incorporated into the plan?
All the conditions in the M&D have been incorporated as conditions of approval. And regarding the one condition regarding the easements, that is incorporated in condition number 11C9.
Okay. And that includes also the concerns that were raised about the environmental impact?
The environmental was not added as a condition since we already incorporate all the environmental conditions in the...
Does that apply to the CEQA as well?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Parking, right? So on the question of parking, which appears to be central here, are there restrictions to the reuse or the added use of the parking?
We have searched our documentation. We can't find any documentation that prohibits or have restriction. One of the things that we have to clarify is that there's no loss in parking. The parking would still be there for the public. Whatever is the existing public parking regulations that are in place will be continued as in place. It is the policy of the Department of Transportation to work with the stakeholders, including the residents, the council district, and the commercial owners, for us to be able to work together to make sure that parking serves their purpose rather than one individual or one entity.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from housing staff? Nope. Okay. All right. I'm good. I'm ready to close.
Okay.
What's the...
Thank you. I just have one question. The historic, there's a design overview board here, right? There's a design overview board that covers this area?
Yes, there is.
And did they approve the designs for this?
They unanimously approved the project.
Okay.
And the conditions have been incorporated.
Yes,
they unanimously approved the project, the Highland Park Historic Board.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes. Mr. Cedillo, do you have a motion in mind, or do you want to?
I do have a motion in mind, but I want to say a few things before we get there. First of all, I want to applaud all the members of the community for this conversation and for your input. I really, truly appreciate the the tenor and the tone, very serious, very sober. I appreciate that because we just came off an election that was very heated and very animated, and this is one of several decisions that was handed to me. This project was much in development for many years, and so it's not something that I initiated. So nonetheless, I have a decision to make, and I'm going to make that decision. Let me tell you how I got here. I have no bias. I come here with a clean sheet. I come to listen to everyone. As I said, the campaign's over, and now I have a duty and an obligation to represent everyone in my district, rich or poor, young or old. I'm agnostic to anyone's immigration status or their income status. I'm here to represent the entire district, whether you voted for me or not, or whether you can vote or not, independent. I was invited to a meeting with the Secretary of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, 2 weeks ago on another project that my predecessor had developed, who is, and as you know, my predecessor was a planner, and I am not. And I went to see one of these developments, and I have to tell you, I was thoroughly impressed. I was thoroughly impressed with the development of low-income housing. Now, I part from a premise that we have a lot of crises. Challenging economy, we have a need for park space, we've heard today a need for parking, and also a need for housing. And what I saw at this development was high-quality development of housing for people of low income. Really high quality, and we were permitted to enter into some of the homes. And I could see a quality of life that was really astounding, very impressive. So here are poor people, low income, paying very modest rates, who could live with the same dignity and respect that I believe, to the pastor, that God intended all of us to have. And this was in one of the most dense areas of our district, at 7th and Alvarado. That building there, that project would be wholly inappropriate in Highland Park. Highland Park is a different community. It has a different history, and it has a different level of civic engagement. And we saw and heard that today. And we heard some of the concerns that have been raised. So, for example, we heard the concern about parking. That's legitimate. I've read the documents. All the people, pro and con, have brought to me the documents to look at that this was designed for housing. But as we've been told, Council, I think you'll agree, there's no additional restrictions, no encumbrances on it, so that we could continue to use the parking and do other things, right? That's the opportunity that exists for us, that we are at a change moment from when it was offered to us, and that it was given to us for parking, and that if we continue with the use of parking, we are not prohibited for doing it for something else that we might deem in the best community interest. Now, we have a whole bunch of other restrictions, right? We have to balance this with the historic overlay. You know, we would be inappropriate if we had that 6 or 7 story tower being built right there. And I say this to you not as not just your council member, but as a person who has made a decision to put their district office right at the corner of 56 and Figueroa. We are committed to this community, that we are moving our resources there. And we've taken the bars off. We took the cage off, because we're going to live there and be there as neighbors. We're not going to be hiding. We're not scared. We're going to open this up and be stakeholders like everybody else there. And we will rely and do all we can to work on the vitality of the neighborhood. So let's go back. So parking will be replaced. No question about it, 100%. Okay? It will be the transition and the phasing of the development will be so that it's not eliminated. We will mitigate it. We will find alternative sites close by, like across the street, close by. And we will work and continue to work with the developer and the merchants to mitigate, as it goes along, the impact on the district. There are some peak periods, and there are some periods where it's empty. I mean, it's both. Some people say, oh, it's great, it's crowded. And other people say, oh, I've seen it empty. You know what? It's both. And so we're going to work to replace the parking or to maintain the parking in a different form. We will continue to evaluate it, and we, with the business community and the neighbors, will figure out what's the best balance. Is it 2 hours? Is it 4 hours? Is it free all the time? You guys will tell us. We'll figure that out. This dialogue and conversation will continue. It will be addressed. The concerns will be mitigated, and it will be secure. Okay, so I say that to you. The architectural design seems appropriate. Appropriate with a Route 66, appropriate with historic Highland Park. It's not a tower. This isn't the millennium discussion that we've had a few weeks ago. This is a discussion about quality housing that architecturally looks consistent with all the other units that are there, and it has I believe, an appropriate mix of low income, market rate, medium income. Now, as I said, I was elected to represent the whole district. Park space is a challenge, and we will continue to work with the developer on this issue. We will look for more off-site, and we will look in the area to see if we can create a scenario that enhances our situation. But I represent the whole district, and I have to tell you that this is a conversation I tell people of for me, when I listen to it, it's like a man with old shoes complaining to a man with no feet, right? Because the rest of my district has 1/3 the park space and double the density. And so as the representative of the entire district, I have to come to a conclusion that represents the whole district. What's the best interest of everything that's involved? Right? How do we get to that balance, and what's in the best interest and the greater good of all of us involved? With respect and concern for every issue that's been raised, us doing all that we can to mitigate, doing all that we can to listen. As I said, this project was given to me, as a few others that we will also be addressing. These projects were given to me. I'm not being political about this. I take it as a clean slate. We evaluate it on the merits and evaluate it on the needs of our district. And for me, at this moment, as I told the Los Angeles Times, I'm not a planner. I'm a doer. I'm going to make decisions. And so at this time, Mr. Chair, I'm going to move that we deny the appeal, right, that we sustain the City Planning Commission's actions, and that we move the council find that the MND is adequate as modified with a whole range of following mitigations that I will read into the record.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So, where is my staff? What am I reading into record? I'm going to read the whole thing into record. So now I must read, to show you that I went to school, everything into the record. Excuse me. Okay, number one, notification and coordination with public and private schools and nearby park, recreation, and library facilities, including, not limited to, Highland Park Recreation and Senior Citizen Centers and Library, relating to construction activities, particularly demolition, grading, and hauling, to minimize exposure impacts and avoid conflicts with school arrival and departure times of children and outdoor activities, number one. Number two, provision of name and contact information to local schools, churches, and city park, recreation, and library facilities and local businesses of construction site foreman or on-site community liaison who is bilingual in English and in Spanish languages. Number three, the applicant shall provide a stake signage at the site with a minimum of 3-inch lettering containing contact information for the Senior Street Use Inspector, Department of Public Works, the Senior Grading Inspector, and the hauling or general contractor in English and in Spanish. Number four, All other on-site posting and distribution of written information to community shall be in both English and Spanish. Number 5, trucks and equipment, especially hauling operations, shall have soil removed from tires prior to exiting construction site to reduce impact of soil and debris being deposited onto city streets. Number 6, applicants, contractors, construction workers are not to park on the streets, in either the residential or commercial corridors or in the nearby city parking facilities. Off-street parking for construction workers shall be provided and paid for by applicant to further mitigate construction parking impacts to nearby residents and businesses during the construction phases of the project. This is a new section, section 15.10. This is related to recreation, increased demand for parks or recreational facilities. Proposed mitigation of Quimby funds is mandated by statute. However, it serves to mitigate applicants' proposed 20-unit homeownership component of the project. However, as proposed, MND does not mitigate the addition of 60 large multi-family units. Applicants' 60 affordable housing units are exempt from Quimby fees. That means there's a discussion going on in the city about whether or not when a development has a small portion of low-income units, whether or not the whole entity gets exempt, and in this instance, they will not be given that opportunity for the exemption. Number 2, initial study identified the potential adverse environmental impact from the project due to the increased use of and resulting acceleration of deterioration to neighborhoods and regional recreational and park facilities. Applicant is now offering to pay Quimby fees for the entire 80 units. These funds will be available and be allocated toward improvements to the city's recreation and park facilities in the Highland Park neighborhood of Council District 1, such as, but not exclusively, Highland Park Recreational Center or Sycamore Grover Park, or acquisition and development of a new mini pocket park located within 1/2 mile of applicant's project as determined in concert with the Department of Recreation and Parks and Council District 1. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Jim Tokunaga with the Planning Department. I just wanted to sort of clarify that in this particular case, because there are 3 maps, there are 3 subdivision maps over the entire project, the advisory agency required the payment of Quimby fees on all 3 sites. So it wasn't just for the 20-unit condominiums. I wanted to clarify that. So they are paying the Quimby fees.
I think I clarified that subsequent, but thank you for restating that.
Okay, so
Mr. Chair, I seek a second.
I'll second that. And so far as these amendments are for the MND, I don't think they require legal review. But with that, motion has been made by Mr. Cedillo with amendments to the MND, and it's been seconded. So moved, and this item will go now to council on what day? Do we have that date yet?
I think it's August the 28th.
Okay, it's scheduled to be in council on August the 28th. Okay.
And you're denying the appeals, right, Council?
We're denying the appeals as moved by Mr. Cedillo early on. Okay. Thank you very much. So ordered. Next item.
Public comment, Council.
There's no public comments. Meeting adjourned without objection. Thank you.